What is up, everybody? We are live. It is 8 o'clock here in Denver, Colorado, Saturday, December 31st, New Year's Eve. Like I said before, in my weekly horoscope, I was going to do a live stream of the 2022 astrology. We're just going to do a big recap. So I see a few people in the comments already. Thank you guys for joining me. If you're just watching the recording of this, thank you so much. I need to mute myself because... Okay, cool. Sorry, I have the live stream comments up on YouTube, and I'm still learning all this tech stuff. But what is up, everybody? This is actually, I was looking back. So I go live on my Patreon two times a month. So I typically do live streams on my Patreon all the time. But this is actually only my second time going live on my actual YouTube channel. The first time was in May of 2020. I actually did a live stream of my weekly horoscope back when I think it was still called like what the fuck is going on in the universe or something like that. Anyway, yeah, guys, before we get started, how was your 2022? How was the year for you guys? Just to kind of open it up, for me personally, this has probably been, I don't want to say the hardest year ever, but the amount of challenges I faced this year were quite a bit. I definitely learned a lot. I learned a lot this year, but for me personally, I was doing really good. 2019 was hard. 2020 was hard. 2021 was a really good year for me, but man, what I'm trying to say here is, going through this year, I realized how much more room I have to grow. I realized what more is still left to me. I'm still a relatively young guy. I'm only 26 now. I'm at that point where I'm starting to forget my age. But I think I really came away from this year of going like, I really don't know everything. Not that I had that feeling about me, but there was a lot of these past few years where I started to feel more confident. Like I knew a lot that was going on, and I still feel really confident about like my knowledge base just on, a broad spectrum of things. But this year, after all of the challenges I've gone through, it's really been a big reflection of like, I need to become the beginner again. I need to become the student again and be open, have an open mind to it, be willing to learn, and not just learn, but like actually be like humble, or maybe not even humble, but just like embracing the humility that is not knowing something and being a beginner, being new to something. And so if you guys are commenting, I'm going to try to do my best to keep up with the live stream comments. How many of you are here? Damn, there's 71 of you here. What the fuck is up? Anyway, I'm going to try to keep up with the comments. I don't know if I can all the way. I'm going to try to read some of them. But anyway, it's just been an interesting year. It's been, in my channel, I'm really keeping my weekly horoscope much more personal development related, because that's where I find myself the most useful. I find, in the astrology space, everybody has their niche, right? Like if you've got a consultation from me and you've wanted to be an astrologer, I always try to tell people, like, find your niche. What expertise that you have or experience that you have that you can provide into the astrology world, add it on top of astrology, right? And for me, it's really been recognizing that that's motivation, personal development, and all of that stuff. And I want to keep it that way. And so I'm saying this because when it comes to 2022, the personal development stuff's been so interesting, but also a big part of my channel is my podcast, The Delineation. No, I have not done an episode in a while. I hope you guys that listen, I know not many of you listen to my podcast as much as my weekly horoscope, but I was doing a bunch of interviews when ISAR was around and people were in town. I hope you guys enjoyed them. I don't know if I'm going to be doing too many more interview type styles, because I like doing the interviews in person. Like it's just not the same over Zoom all the time. Like SJ is different. SJ is in like fucking Macedonia or something like that. So like, and same thing with Gordon White. He's in Tasmania. So like I have no really choice but to talk to them that way. But I'm bringing all of this up because a big part of my channel is also talking about world events, geopolitics, economics. And this year was so wild. I mean, I got some predictions right, and there's one that I'm very proud of that I want to talk about as we go on through the year. But I got some things wrong. And I think it's important as an astrologer to make predictions, right? I think there's a group of astrologers, and I'm not naming anybody specific here, but just like in the astrology world, there's like this scarcity or this fear around making predictions about, saying prolific or prophetic things. And then there's kind of another subset of people that like make predictions with things and then end up being wrong and then never really recount those. And I'm trying to find my place, right? Like something that I think is really hard as a YouTuber is like I'm just a human being. I'm not perfect. However, the parasocial relationship creates this weird thing where, and I struggle with this too, because I have like YouTubers that I follow and watch all the time. And in my head, they're great. They couldn't do anything wrong. And then when they do mess up something, I have like such a much more harsh opinion about them for like no reason, even though they're just human beings. And I say all that to just be like, I'm doing my best in terms of, doing what I think is right, if that makes sense. And I hope people can recognize that. And that goes for both the personal development stuff, my, the weekly horoscope, but also the geopolitical, politics, economic parts of my channel that, I've been really enjoying talking about. However, has been very difficult with 2022 because 2022 has just been such a fucking weird year. Anyway, reading some of your comments here. 2022 is hard. Thank you for the super chat. Hipfi, Hiphi. I know who you are. You're on Patreon, but I don't. What the heck is Hipfi? Thank you for the super chat. Yeah, I'm going live. Send me some super chats, y'all. There's some streamers that be making some money. Send me some money. If you don't have it, don't send me your last dollars. But I appreciate the support. If you really want to support me, go over to my Patreon. I just posted my January 2023 monthly rising sign horoscopes on Patreon. I do monthly rising sign horoscopes. I do a live monthly overview where you guys get to chat with me. I have a Discord group. I have a Ask Me Anything episode I do the first Wednesday of the month. Hi-Fi. Okay, that's what I thought. But I couldn't. I'm dumb. Anyway, go over on Patreon if you really want to support me. That really helps. But I guess we could start looking at 2022. So there's quite a bit to talk about. I pulled up the chart already for January 1st of 2022. And I kind of just want to take this moment to like, and part of me, this is something I really love about this job is like a lot of this job helps me. Like I don't do my weekly, like, don't get me wrong. I do my weekly horoscope for you guys, but it's a lot for me. And I know that sounds selfish, but like, that's what keeps me motivated to do it is because it helps me. It keeps me motivated to be better at it and to be doing it as best as I can because it is about me. It makes me better. It helps me out with my life. And I just want to take this moment to reflect of like, where were you at this time of the year last year? Little Black Wolf, thank you for the super chat. Happy New Year. But where were you at last year? And I really want you to think about that because some people, and this is a thing, if you want, I need to update my consultation page, but it is amazing how many people will come to me. And I know I talk about this on my consultation page, but they'll be like, people on my consultation basis is like, you should try to think about what's been going on the past few years because we're going to be talking about your past and stuff like that. And, people can kind of recognize maybe what events were occurring, but I really want you to think about like, where was your mindset at? What were you actually going through? Was there were you dealing with a lot of fear? Were you dealing with a lot of challenges? And more so like, I don't want you to think about what was externally going on, but what was internally going on for you last year. The reason being is when we look at January 1st of 2022, we really opened up the month with Venus retrograde. Man, and I've talked about this before. God, that Venus retrograde was sick. Something that I'll tell people like it. So an analogy that I've been really using a lot in my consultations lately is astrology is like a poker game. Like I get legitimately frustrated when people say this type of stuff, but I'll get like clients or something like that, and I'll pull up the chart, and they'll be like, my chart's probably the worst thing you've ever seen, and it's so bad, and why is X, Y, like this is X, Y, and Z placement the reason why I'm never going to be loved, or I'm never going to be successful, and it's just kind of like, it's a poker game here. Kadiri? Kadiri? Oh boy, I'm gonna have to work for that super chat pronouncing your name. Kadiri? Shout out to Kadiri for the super chat. But astrology is like a poker game. Your birth chart's like a poker game. If you don't know shit about poker, and again, I'm not the best poker player here, so I might sound stupid in my analogy, but let's say whatever's on the table is workable and you get a hand. If you don't know what you're doing, you can actually get a pretty good hand and you could lose money because you put in your ante. Maybe you placed a couple bets in, but you didn't know what you were doing. So you just folded your cards. But then someone else who has a super, super shitty hand, but knows the game and knows what they're doing, can just make a bluff and they can rake everybody's money in. And this is super important because, like, I get so tired of people thinking astrology is just the stamp of whether or not you're a good person or bad person, if you're successful or not. And it's like, whose chart I was just looking at actually earlier today was Jonah Hill's. Jonah Hill has a very interesting, he's going through some shit, and he just has a very interesting life in terms of, he's always struggled with his weight and his body. He's been ultra successful in his career. And if you've ever looked at Jonah Hill's chart, let me see if I can actually pull it up here. His chart's a fucking wreck, to be honest with you. It's not that good. Like, I was looking at him, like, I don't know how he's not that successful, but like, it's not the best chart ever. And I like him as an example of like, oh, astro.com, where are you? I like his chart as an example of like, and again, what's important. Oh, here it is. Oh, they just changed their icon. Oh, that's cool. Astro Databank changed their icon. That's big news for me. I know half of you guys don't probably give a shit. But let me pull this up. Oh, hold on. This is going to look a little out of whack here because I've got a lot going on. There we go. So let's look at Jonah Hill's chart real quick. So Capricorn rising, right? He's got Sun Jupiter in the 12th. So Sun Jupiter is arguably good, but it's in the 12th house. He's Sun Neptune, so movie star. But look at the Saturn midheaven. And if you actually do whole sign houses, which I actually want to go backwards here, and let's see if we can do whole sign houses. Oh, there's a way to do this. I can't remember how to do it. Anyway, he's got this whole sign Mars in the 10th house. It's fallen Mars. It's squaring Mercury. He has Saturn and Scorpio, Venus and Scorpio. And you could see a lot of like his, he's definitely had a lot of struggles in his career and how Hollywood's just like made him feel like shit. But he's also this ultra successful, movie star. And so I bring all of that up just to say like, oh, let me do this. I bring that up all just to say like, it's really not about like your birth chart. Your birth chart is just giving you the cards that you have to play with in the most like specific sense. And if you can figure out other parts of your life and you can figure out how life works, then you're going to have a better understanding of how to play these cards, right? So anyway, hit like button 80 here, half hit like, I don't know what that means. Poker face, never reveal your birth time. I'm assuming you're a Scorpio rising. Yeah, and keeping journals is really important. But anyway, I'm saying all this to just kind of preface opening up 2022. As we talk about 2022, we have that Venus retrograde. And again, this is why I started talking about this. I fucking loved that Venus retrograde. I think it was scary with the eclipses because there was an eclipse. It was our first opening eclipse in Scorpio and Taurus. I believe it was November 12th of 2021 when Venus entered shadow. And there was kind of this fear of what's going on. And Venus was on Pluto for a long time. And that Venus retrograde, this was also Jupiter entering Pisces. And this was really interesting about the, now that I'm live on YouTube, I've had some issues with my YouTube channel and like getting, demonetized and some other stuff. So I'm trying to be really actually careful about how I say things. Not that like I'm afraid to say what I think, but more so of like, I want to keep my platform that's made me successful. Like I don't want to lose it. But, James Clark, shout out James Clark. Yes. Part 2 of Pluto and Aquarius is coming soon. A reason I could use some super chats is, my computer is, on its last life, and I just spent a fuck ton of money on a new computer setup. And once I get this new setup going, I should be. So my goal is, so I've been batch recording my weekly horoscopes. So typically I was recording them on Fridays, and it was every Friday morning I would record, get it out on Patreon. Patrons would have it, and then it'd be out Sunday. But I hired an editor, which is another reason I could use some support. And my editor, I was like giving it to her on like Friday and wanting it to get back on Friday, and she was like, I can't, like, you're taking up all my Fridays. Is like, okay. So I haven't actually batch recording them. I'm typically shooting 2 of them on Wednesday mornings, to where she has 2 days to edit them, go through them, and then I can post them early on Patreon for everybody. But why I'm bringing that up is my goal here is to be doing 2 weeklies on Wednesday, and then batch recording delineation podcasts. Now, I can talk. I can fucking ramble. And my solo delineation episodes have been an hour and a half sometimes. And I'm probably going to shift that to about like 30 minutes, maybe 45 max, so I can just stay on point, stay on focus. And I should be recording those on Thursdays. And then I really plan on shooting a lot of short end content. Like, I don't know if you guys saw my short. I did this. I posted it on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube of you are reading or watching the wrong horoscope. That one did really well. And as a YouTube content creator, they're kind of forcing me to do shorts, but I also see the potential in it. So I want to do those things. So I'm saying all this to say I'm rescheduling and I'm reframing my work week to where I can be doing consistent delineation episodes, because I've been wanting to do more, but it's just, I have these big ideas and these big topics I want to talk about, and then I just ramble for an hour and a half, and then it's just like I need to get more focused with it. But you'll be seeing those very soon here, more consistently. Adele, shout out for the $2 super chat. Thanks for this. Happy New Year. But to go back to what I was saying, Jupiter and Pisces. So this is so important when we talk about when we talk about March of 2023. I've said this so much. March of 2023, everything changes. And I know that sounds dramatic, and I'm not trying to be one of those astrologers that's like, the new portal is opening and everything's going to be crazy. It's like, most astrologers agree March is pretty fucking crazy on like a global level. And why I say that is, and I've been very open about this, when Jupiter entered Pisces, and this has to do with the COVID stuff, by the way, because all of the Aquarius stuff and the Pisces stuff have been very intent about it. But when Jupiter entered Pisces in May, it was May of 2021. So not 2022, 2021. That was when the CDC reversed their mask mandates. And this got a lot of controversy on both sides. All of the very pro-mask people were very like, what is the CDC thinking? We're still in the middle of a pandemic. This is crazy. And then the other people, the anti-masker people, were like, thank God, finally, this was dumb in the first place. And that was when Jupiter entered Pisces. Now, Jupiter stationed retrograde in June or July of 2021, and then went back into Aquarius. And the day that happened, the CDC reversed that, and they said, masks go back on. And so that was when Jupiter went back into Aquarius. Then, as we have Jupiter go back into Pisces here in January, do you guys remember, like, this is something I've been thinking about so much of last winter. Last winter was the supposed winter of death for the unvaccinated and, all of this, bullshit essentially. But why I'm bringing this up is last summer of 2021, it was like, if you're not vaccinated, you're a murderer. If you're not vaccinated, you deserve to lose your job and, be censored and all of these crazy things. And then by the winter of 2022, what happened? Everyone got COVID. That was a huge deal. And a lot of that, and we'll talk about that because that really started during the Mercury retrograde in Aquarius. I don't have exact dates on that. Well, as far as like, I don't have any, I didn't really prep for this in terms of having like news articles ready. That would have took way too much time. But last winter, like in 2021, it was like, oh, why would you not be vaccinated? Because I don't want to get COVID. And then it was like over the winter, everyone who got vaccinated, and I know some people got the vaccine and never got COVID and all that stuff, but like everyone got COVID last winter, and that narrative dissolved. Like Pisces is a dissolving sign. Neptune also being there is a dissolvent, or a dissolvent. That's not right. There's a word for that, and I can't think of it. But around 2022, everyone really gave up the COVID narrative. or at least the vaccine narrative in terms of like, okay, it doesn't stop the spread. Okay, it's like you maybe it protects you from severe illness and death, which, you know, I'll just dramatically roll my eyes, but I can't say more than that with YouTube. But it stopped working in terms of stopping the spread, and everyone just kind of gave up on it during that time. Now, at the same time, Venus retrograde was much more economic. Now, one of my big predictions I made in 2022 that I was right about pretty much to the fucking day was that the Fed was going to raise interest rates, which I'm very proud of my prediction for that. I've got to gloat about that. That one was a good one. But this winter was such a weird one. It was a weird one for the holidays because people were still all over. Solvent. Thank you, Lindsay. I appreciate that. It's a solvent. I could not think of that word. But it was really weird because the holidays were really weird. It wasn't December of 2020, but it was December of 2021, January of 2022, where it was just all these weird feelings. You know, some people didn't go for the holidays, some people did. And with Venus retrograding in Capricorn, for me personally, that was just a really big value shift. And that's something I always explain. Venus retrogrades are value shifts. And in Capricorn, this is systemic. This is about, you know, governments, institutions, plans, all of that kind of good stuff I've been talking about with the Mercury retrograde. But let's kind of keep going forward. But this is what I wanted to talk about was this. So it was around this January 14th time that really, a super sticker. What? I don't do live stream enough on YouTube, so I don't know what shit is. A super sticker. Cool. Thank you, Kathy Boykin. Hippo character flips around and does V sign. Oh, that's funny. You guys can't see that. Like on my live chat on my software, it like explains what's going on. That's funny. Anyway, but this was the Mercury retrograde I was talking about because this was about the time that everyone started getting COVID. Omicron spread. That's right. Someone said something about Omicron. I didn't read all of it. Winter of 2021, if people got COVID, Omicron, the majority of people that passed were unvaccinated. Yeah, we can actually dispute that. It was actually, most people were actually overweight and obese and had comorbidities, but we don't talk about that because that derives from the narrative that they want to push. But anyway, Mercury squaring Uranus, that was kind of like the whole, everyone got Omicron. And then there was this conversation of, and this is important because Aquarius is three things: society, technology, and health, which is interesting because we've seen over the past 3 years how much all of those topics have coalesced together. Society with their technology. Like I just saw this article about how the trackers on, remember in 2020 where it was like, do you want notifications for if someone has COVID near you to get alerted? I never signed up for that shit because I, kind of had a little bit of common sense. But a lot of people thought that was a good thing. And then lo and behold, these companies are using this data to target minority people and all of this bullshit. And so like the idea of health, experts, technology, and society coming together is like all this Aquarius stuff. And you've just seen it in such a loud way. But when Mercury stationed retrograde squaring Uranus, this was like all of a sudden something shifting. And this was pretty much when the narrative was like, yeah, Omicron spread everywhere. Some people argue that somehow the it was just so spreadable that, that the vaccine saved people. I can't even remember some of the narratives now. The narratives are so hard to keep up with COVID, but a lot of it was also the way viruses work is they either get more deadly or more spreadable, and then lo and behold, you make a vaccine, so then they become more spreadable to the people that got the vaccine. Whoa. Anyway, so that was a big part of the first part of the year. The other thing I was just looking at when I first started this was, God, Mars was in Sagittarius? Whoa, I remember the Mars South Node conjunction, and that was in December of 21, and that was a big purge. But Mars in Sagittarius, man, it was just like winging it, going for it. And and I'm bringing all of this COVID stuff up because that was a big part of the year. That was a big part of January was, Omicron spreading, everyone kind of being in consensus that the vaccine didn't stop the spread, which if you would have said 6 months before that, you were an anti-science person. And I'm bringing this up because that was when Jupiter hit Pisces. Right as that happened, and this is important because Saturn's about to enter Pisces. That 0-degree Pisces is so important. When you talk about the next 3 or 4 years, if you've gotten a consultation with me, I've talked about this. This Saturn and Pisces transit that we have for 2023 is not just Saturn transiting Pisces. it is building up to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Now, as Saturn enters Pisces, Pluto is also entering the other sign of Saturn. So and again, when we talk about 0 degrees Aquarius, when Mars conjoined Saturn, March 30th or March 12th of 2020, that was when the lockdowns happened. When Jupiter conjoined Saturn at 0 degrees Aquarius, that's when the vaccine got introduced. Then when Jupiter entered Pisces, CDC lifted mask mandates, Jupiter left Pisces, CDC came back with mask mandates, then Jupiter entered Pisces again, and more of the narrative dissolved. Omicron came around, people got more relaxed on masks, and that was the end of that. But we're not done yet, because we still have those 2 degrees of 0 Pisces and 0 Aquarius still being activated. That's so important to understand. And I've tried to tell people we're not done with this yet. And it's not like I still don't necessarily think COVID's going to come back, but I can't really, this is why you should go on my Patreon, because I could be a little bit more open about this stuff. But really what's going to happen is the new technology that was introduced in terms of eradicating a virus was not tested thoroughly. I mean, I've said this too in my predictions that Mars retrograde in Gemini, we're going to get a whole new information about the jab, and we're going to be arguing back and forth. We found out they never even tested to see if it stopped spread. I wonder what else that they didn't test, or what else that they didn't say anything about. And we're going to know about that when we get to March. And I think that's going to come probably from a congressional investigation. I couldn't think of that word for a second, but we'll see. But again, I'm bringing all this up because this was a big deal in the beginning of 2022, and we're going to have that come back in 2023. We're not done with those same themes of the COVID narrative, the lockdown type stuff, the vaccine type stuff, and also that narrative changing in some way. And this is Saturn going in, right? Jupiter going into Pisces is like, CDC's like, fuck it, no mask. And then, everyone was like, fuck it, I guess everyone's getting Omicron, whatever. Let's stop doing the vaccine passport thing. Saturn's going to come in and really dilute some of those truths and make it really confusing. James Clark, shout out for that super chat. Anyway, sorry, I've got a cat making an announcement. The announcement is she is leaving. So, gosh, in January, I'll just tell you guys, that Venus retrograde was fucking kick ass. Like, I really enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to this next Venus retrograde, to be honest with you guys, too. I personally love Venus retrogrades. They're not like, because some people are just so like, oh, is this good? Is this bad? Is this, oh my God, it's Mercury retrograde. It's the end of the world. And it's just like, stop with it. Like, I think when you have your birth chart and you're having a super hard transit, you're allowed to like complain. But just because a certain event in the sky is happening, like, and I've talked about this before, it's all about perspective. Sometimes the worst things in people's lives end up becoming the best things that's ever happened to them. And I think astrology provides an excellent, framework to understand that, right? I mean, Venus retrogrades happen in the same sign every 8 years. So you can look back every 8 years and kind of go, what was going on that time? What was going on the time before? Well, you got to be a little bit older in order to do that stuff. But so we get to January. Aquarius season was just locking everything in. And then everything changed when Mars entered Capricorn. This is when I believe inflation numbers were starting to come in more. Some of you don't pay attention to economics. Honestly, yet as for someone who's been learning about economics and really studying them, you don't really, it's just too much at times. But this is when everything started to shift with the economic picture, because when Mars entered Capricorn, it was Mercury stationing direct on Pluto, Mars and Venus in Capricorn. All this Capricorn energy started to come in. It started coming really hot. This is where I predicted that the Fed would raise interest rates. I said that the Fed would raise, and so I did a Venus retrograde in Capricorn delineation episode. I made an episode about my predictions, and there was a couple that I did. There was one about the JPCA or the Iran nuclear deal. I don't remember what that one was, but I do remember I was like, the Fed's going to raise interest rates in March, and that's going to be a really big deal. And the reason I predicted that was because in that spring of 2014, after the last Venus retrograde in Capricorn, was the last time the Fed nominally raised interest rates. That was my whole line of thinking. Plus, we'd been at 0%. And for some of you, back this time last year, you probably didn't even know anything about interest rates, versus now, as you've seen interest rates come higher, there's been a lot more people that typically wouldn't fucking give a fuck about interest rates having to be like, oh yeah, like the Fed's raising interest rates. I don't know what that means, but everything's getting more expensive. It's getting harder to get a car. It's getting harder to get a loan for a house and all that good stuff. I need to take a drink of water here. So we had the Mars, Venus, and Capricorn. It was hustle season, man. I was working my ass off during this time. I was working on a course. I was posting like, man, in the winter, I was posting like 3 videos a week. I was doing all my Patreon shit. I was working on this course. I was working on moving. I had so much going on during this time. I was fucking killing it. Anyway, then Mercury started to leave shadow. And then it was really around this time. This brings me to the day. Does anyone remember what happened on this day? I don't remember if it was the 28th or the 26th. The Ukraine invasion happened. So this was another thing where, let me also say this too, like, and I've been very vocal about it. And this is something like, I'm a human being. I have been and Saturn's also my time lord. I have fallen in this trap. Society has fallen in this trap of being so divided on ideological levels, on information, right? Like, I think the term information wars is so good. It's funny that Alex Jones already kind of took that name. But Saturn in Aquarius has been like, it doesn't matter what it is, we're all going to be split about it. Doesn't matter what it is, there's going to be some type of divide about it. You could argue that that's true for any case, but I mean, it was like everything. It was, you know, do masks work? Do they not work? Do Black Lives Matter or do Blue Lives Matter? Is it Joe Biden or Trump? Is it vaccine or no vaccine? Are you pro-Ukraine or are you a Putin puppet? But the Ukraine invasion was something I got wrong. The reason being was and this is just me probably being a Gen Z and just not being so familiar, I think, with war, besides, you know, the America just, you know, throwing trillions of dollars into the Middle East for no reason, and killing 1 million Iraqis, which, you know, it's just funny that people love to criticize, you know, the Putin regime in Russia, but that criticism vanishes when we say, oh, America did that same thing, but like arguably 10,000 times worse than Iraq. But the Ukraine invasion happened, which was a huge turning point of this year. And arguably it was a turning point for the next decade. If you watched my podcast I did with Gordon White, we talked about this. Because the thing is here, and again, I've tried to tell this to a lot of my international clients, and it's been very difficult just because some people aren't so familiar with geopolitics. But like, I have a lot of people that are like, I want to move to Europe. I want to go to Europe, and, you know, I want to get out of America. It so sucks. And it's like, dude, you don't want to go to Europe. Not for this next decade. Unless you're totally cool with instability, high prices, probably stricter immigration laws. And a lot of people think that most countries are like America, where you can just, it's super funny. I always tell my Canadian clients, because like, I don't know if you know this, like, if you're a Canadian trying to legally immigrate to America, it is like, for whatever reason, insanely hard. I always just tell them to hop the border. I'm like, everyone else does it, and they get all these benefits. I know that sounds, you know, conservative, whatever, but it's just true. But when it comes to the Ukraine war, that's setting the tone for the next decade. Because you guys got to understand, Russia, there's this idea that they're supposed to be like, he wants to go back to the USSR and claim all of this territory. But what people don't understand is, like, this is a war against the West. The US has been pushing NATO alliances into Ukraine and into all these other countries that Russia understandably isn't cool with. And a lot of people are like, we're not pushing NATO into Ukraine. It's like, we're actually gaslighting Ukraine. We're actually using the Ukrainians as cannon fodder for NATO expansion and Western ideals, which is super fucked up. But we don't talk about that because we have to stand with them and not ask questions. But that's a big deal, because as you see Ukraine dissolve, which is going to happen, something me and SJ talked about, and Dan, I don't know if you guys know this, me and SJ and Dan have a podcast that we do with Dan once every quarter. Once the sun goes into Capricorn, Aquarius, the cardinal signs. So Aries. So every solstice and equinox, me and SJ hop on Dan's podcast, and we go it's called Pluto Pilled. So it's like no censor, full like fucking open doors, talking about everything. And something we talked about between January, so not 2022, but January of 2023 and March of 2023, expect a new war front. That could involve America. I don't know. I can't imagine because I don't have enough information to really say like, oh yeah, America's going to get attacked. But there is going to be a new war front opened up, probably in the European zone. And people need to understand that if Russia goes in and still continues to do what they're doing in Ukraine, and you get like places like Poland getting involved and all of that stuff, you're going to see much more insecurity in Europe. And what does Europe not have? Europe does not have food security. Europe does not have energy security. Europe is barely holding on by a thread at this point. And this is why I've been telling people, it's like this whole world is going to go through a crisis over these next 3 or 4 years in a lot of different ways. I mean, like, I was just reading more about the Chat GPT thing that came up. If you guys aren't familiar, it's like that AI that you can talk to and everything. And SJ actually brought that up in the podcast that we talked about. And these next 3 or 4 years are going to be really, really, really crazy in terms of what this world goes through, how this all comes about. And you have to understand, we, especially as Gen Zs and as millennials love to complain that they have it hard. Don't get me wrong. They got fucked over in a lot of ways, just like everybody else has been fucked over. But we've never seen war. We've never actually seen hard times. Like, people don't understand, like in World War II, if like you were a man, like you were not only going to war or you were part of the war effort, women had to contribute to that. Like, they also went to door and took people's gold. They also, like, it was so all encompassing that we've never seen anything like that. Now, I don't like to say that there's going to be like World War III is going to happen, but it's not going to look like World War II. It's not going to look like, it's going to be so much more covert. It's going to be so much more technological. It's going to be so much more economic, social too. I mean, like what China's doing with TikTok is a total psyop. I mean, if you just like, it takes 5 minutes of understanding the economics of TikTok and the CCP's agenda to understand like, oh, this is probably like for a reason. But I'm bringing all this up because that Ukraine invasion, which I didn't think they were going to do, and that was my own ignorance of thinking that wouldn't happen. And once that invasion happened, it was very clear to me that these next 3 to 4 years are going to involve a lot of war. Where that is, again, something that I was, what I was really more betting on was also the China-Taiwan thing going down. The more that I get, the more that I learn about it, I have less. I'm less hawkish on China-Taiwan. It's very complicated there. As the more that I'm learning about it, and I don't know now. Again, the reason why I was like, whoa, because if China invaded Taiwan, I mean, like you would literally see overnight the economy tank. This whole country would literally stop functioning. And we would have to start from the ground up. It would be just like COVID, where everything just stops and we have to reset. But I'm less hawkish on that. I don't necessarily think if that's going to happen. But again, with Russia invading Ukraine, it opens up a whole new world of what's to come. And a lot of people were talking about what was the Pluto return of America going to be, because we had the Pluto return of America. We had, 2 or 3 of them this year? And that first one, and let's actually get to that day. What was it? Let me hide my stuff from you guys. Hold on. I have the American Sibley chart here. Is it 2704? America Sibley chart. Pluto's at 2733. That's right. So if you guys remember this was around this time when we had the first Pluto return of America. Yeah, so the Russia invasion happened around, I mean, it was pretty much around the same time. That was when the US put sanctions on Russia, which is so important to understand because, like, if you can, I can't really explain the whole how the economy works in just a quick, brief second, but like you have to understand when the world's largest and most powerful nation can just weaponize the dollar in which all transactions occur on, specifically like the petrodollar. That's something that the other two largest nations in the world are going to go, huh, we're not going to use that money anymore. And this is something I've been talking about, like the central bank digital currency, like that was a big part of it. But the Pluto return of America was putting sanctions on Russia. We took them off the SWIFT system and we literally weaponized and that's, guys, if you don't understand how the dollar works and how we have complete control, like most currencies are pegged to the dollar, most current and all oil trades go through dollars. Like the US and the dollar is the driving force of this world. And this is why inflation is so important, is because these countries, Sri Lanka is a good example. I don't know if you guys remember Sri Lanka, their citizens, like, I don't remember if it like collapsed or their citizens ousted their government essentially because of what's been going on. But like, you have to understand these countries all have debt. Every country has debt. There's like a handful of them that don't have any debt. I think Russia's one of them. And China, I think, is one of them too. But this debt is denominated in dollars. So that means even if they have, let's say, let's say it's Russia, just for example, let's say they have 10 trillion ruble and they have to pay this debt, they couldn't pay it in that ruble. They have to pay it in the dollars. And so when all of the debt in the world is through a contract through dollars, and you have the rising prices go up and debt gets more expensive because when the Fed raises interest rates, it costs more money to service that debt. So if you want to pay off that debt, like for example, if you take out a credit card and you just swipe, and let's say you got you spent 10,000 on your credit card, let's say your interest rate's 20%. Well, if that interest rate goes to 25%, you're going to go, oh shit, I need to get a little bit more money so I can pay this off. And that's what happened around the world with every country that owes debt in dollars. So they said, oh shit, we need to get our hands on dollars. This is why the dollar has strengthened over the past year, which is really weird because the dollar is like this fiat currency and it's totally going to collapse at some point. But the dollar's been really strong. And this is also why inflation, I mean, again, we printed a bunch of money and all that good stuff. And then plus you had like this supply chain crisis. But the reason you've seen a lot more inflation too is because this urge for like dollars are harder to get nowadays. So anyway, I'm just rambling off geopolitics now, but that was an important part of the first quarter of this year. It was pretty much marked by, Omicron going around and the Ukraine invasion, which again was it was just so ridiculous to me how people were like, you either stand with Ukraine and you don't ask any questions, or you are a Putin puppet and a propagandist, which was ridiculous because like, I can understand having sympathy for the people, this innocent people in Ukraine, but also like, what does the American military industrial complex do? We don't do good things. And that goes all the way back to Vietnam, arguably Korea. That was a little different, but, I mean, you could just look at what the US has done to the Middle East. Now the Middle East has, for the longest time, always had a lot of, unpeaceful moments, but we destroyed Iraq. Just I can't even get into the beginning of it, but I think what people need to understand about the whole Ukraine thing is that it's a slush fund for the military industrial complex. Let's just send these untrained people that it's one of the most corrupt countries in Europe, all of this money that we can't trace to fight this war that they can't win, which that's an Obama take. Like Obama back in 2014, when all this actually happened, like this war actually began in 2014, Obama said, no, I'm not giving these people money. Like, why would I give them weapons that would make them think they can win a war against Russia, which they can't? And there was all of this talk of like, Russia's losing and Ukrainians are going to win, which was just like, if you guys don't understand this, what Russia did was called a specialized military operation. And no, that was not to be like, oh, that was just to hide that it was an invasion. It was a special military operation because under law and Russian law, that only allows so much of their military to be used. If they actually full on declared war, Ukraine would have been gone already. So it was just a small part of their military versus the Ukrainian military. It's been like everything. In fact, they've done conscription and they've done, like pretty much men couldn't leave the border. They had to go fight in the war. So it's pretty much like, again, like I don't like being one of those people of like, don't trust the mainstream news and mainstream media is bad, but it's also like, they're not actually giving you anything. They're telling you what to think, which is horrible. Cause like, I used to love the news. Like but it's so much not the news anymore. And I find it very difficult to find nonpartisan information anymore. Like, so I just listen to both sides and make up my own opinion, which is what most people should do. But anyway, I'm talking about all of this because this was a huge part of the beginning of 2022 and is setting the precedent for the rest of the decade. So let's keep going. What was going on around the beginning of March? We had that Mars Venus Pluto conjunction. When did the Fed start raising interest rates? Let me see if we can find that. Because I believe that was March. When did Fed start raising interest rates? Okay, I'm not going to be able to find that. Hold on. Let's read some of these comments. Someone yelled at me that I wasn't reading the comments good enough. If I was reading too many of the comments, people would be like, there's people that are like, you're not reading enough comments. And then if I was reading all the comments, people are like, he's not talking about anything. He's just reading the comments. Hold on 1 second. It is so hot in here. I need to turn this fireplace off. Woo. Sir, must you have a triangle in your birth chart to be successful in life? No. The next demic is scheduled August 2023. That's interesting. I saw something about 2025. It was like some stupid name too. 2025, they said that there could be a pandemic, which wouldn't surprise me. The astrology of 2025 is insane. How about the earth shifting and drastic changes? It can break the changes with this human to human war and stuff. Don't know what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know what someone was saying about the climate issues, but yeah, a lot of climate issues are this might lose me. I don't want to say some followers, but like again, so much of climate is the climate changing? Yeah, but the problem with the term climate change is that implies that climate is supposed to be fixed. There is not one day or 1 year in the 4 billion, is it 4 billion years of Earth's history? I don't remember how far it goes back. The climate has never been stable. It's always changed. And there's been times where there's been more CO2 and more heat than there is now. I think the biggest thing that's actually worry about with the climate change stuff is just the bullshit in the ocean, because we're seeing some fucking huge problems with that. And plastics. Like, did you guys hear? This is something I heard. Polar bears are starting to deal with health issues due to the microplastics they are consuming in the fish that they eat. I heard that and I was like, holy fuck. Mainstream media is the entertainment division of the military. Yep. News has value, but it's not news. You can't trust the news. You're so right about venues in the media. I think you mean Venus. You get a red pill. You get a red pill. It's one of those things too, where like, I like telling people how I used to be blue pilled, like, and I'm still blue pilled. Like, it blows my mind where it's like, I believe like if we could spend, did you know that the money that we spent on Ukraine, we could have ended homelessness 5 times over? So I get really pissed off about the Ukraine stuff simply because it's like, yeah, fuck the, drug overdoses and the dead bodies and the, after living in LA, it's over 100,000 people. Like, a lot of people think, the homeless is bad in LA, but they're over exaggerating. I'm like, you've never seen 100,000 people living in the streets. It's one of those things where you almost want to just do something about it yourself because it's so fucking sad. It like ignites empathy at such a level that you get enraged. That's how I feel about it. But we could have ended homelessness 5 times over, but we decided to give all that money to the military industrial complex to fight this proxy war with Ukraine and to kill a bunch of Ukrainians along the way. So don't know what to tell you guys about that. What do you think about Pluto going into Aquarius? I have a podcast about that. It's very based. I'm going to make another podcast about that. And my next Pluto and Aquarius podcast is going to be much more positive because like, which is going to be a struggle. The last one was a little deep, but I want to bring about it in a positive sense. Yeah, I've seen Russell Brand. I like some of his stuff. Just sometimes he's just hard to watch. Like, it's hard to watch him, and it's just because it's not like anything. It's just like his voice, his personality. I think what he's doing is good, but I just don't like him personally, and I hope that doesn't make people mad. How do you feel about PBS NewsHour then? PBS is literally or no, PBS is like the government funded news. So if you want to listen to the talking points of what the government wants you to think, listen to PBS. If you want to listen to what, other credible journalists have to say and what other perspectives that are there, I would maybe not listen to PBS. Oh, Kathy Boykin. So this is something cool. I don't know if you guys know this. I can actually take comments and put this. It's not just the military's recycling. Like, this is something that people don't understand. Like, recycling is like a huge scam. Like, I remember talking about this like 2 years ago, and people are like, what? Like, no, it's not. And it's a total scam. They don't you put all of your recycling stuff, they don't actually recycle it. They just burn all of it, which is arguably better than what they would do with it. Because what America and Canada do, we ship all of our plastics to China and all these other South Asian countries, and to tell them to deal with it, and then they just dump it in the ocean, which you can't really blame them, because why the fuck would they want our trash? That's a big reason why there's so much trash in the ocean, is because of the recycling scam and the trash scam. The real blue pill is the friends we made along the way. Yeah, well, and this is what I was saying too about like my blue pill is very like, it blows my mind that we don't have free healthcare. Now, I also believe in the same sentence of, I believe in free healthcare. I also believe that the healthcare and medical industrial complex is just as corrupt, if not more corrupt, than the military industrial complex. So I think if there would be free healthcare, we need to completely transform the medical industry. I think that's a pipe dream because there's so much control over it. But, my take is very like, yeah, we deserve free healthcare, but also healthcare is kind of a scam right now, because if you look at the past 60 years, we've all gotten no one is healthier over all this medical stuff. We're literally all more sick. People like to look at this as, oh, we're living longer. That actually passed away. We're actually living less longer. Cancer, all of these diseases that cancer existed for a long time, but all these diseases that didn't exist 100 years ago, everyone's got them now. So I think this idea that the medical industry is like good is like kind of dumb when you actually look at the results. Current favorite astrology book. I'm reading Valens right now. It's actually really good. It's too far over there, but I'm reading Valens. Anyway, let's go on with the year. So then we had this time in about the beginning of March. And again, the beginning of March was really interesting for me, because this is when I was getting ready to move back to Denver. I just had a lot going on at this time, and then everything went into Aquarius. And I think this is really when the whole, like, what side are you on? Are you pro Ukraine? Are you not in Ukraine? Are you, are you this? Are you that? And it was just so annoying and ugly. And this was also the amount of propaganda that there was just unbearable. Like with both things, including, like, there was still people that were being like, by this point, people were still like, the vaccine would stop the spread, and it never did to begin with. But there was just a lot of propaganda and a lot of just division. And that's something too that I'm really looking forward to with 2023. I think the division is, well, Pluto's going into Aquarius. So I do think on one level, the division is going to get worse. But on another level, I don't think it's going to be so in our faces or so over controlling. I think it will be much more like in the background. Not that, like, it's kind of hard to explain my feelings about this. I just don't think, like, with Saturn being in Pisces, I think it's going to be less divisive. But with Pluto and Aquarius, I think that division's going to run like what division there already was will seep deeper, if that makes sense. So it's like on the surface, I think things will be cool, but underneath, I think it will be more concrete, if that makes sense. So let's keep going forward. Mercury went into Pisces. God, what was going on by March? This is when I was moving. That was an interesting time. Oh, and then we had the next Mars-Saturn conjunction, and I made a delineation episode about this. This was Jupiter-Neptune, and this was Mars-Saturn. That was when we had more lockdowns in China. And that was what was more crazy to me about these past few months of Mars retrograde in Gemini was what happened in China. Like, what people don't understand, how crazy, for one, how insane zero COVID was. Like, just the amount of propaganda that country can put on their people and control is just absolutely terrifying. And that zero COVID could ever happen. But two, that the government actually listened to its citizens. Like, I think that was probably one of the only cases of Saturn and Aquarius where the people's reaction to something changed something. I think you can argue the George Floyd protests, like, because there were so many protests of like black kids getting murdered that didn't do anything, but it was like once the George Floyd thing happened, it was like, I think that guy, whatever that cop's name was, he was arrested pretty quickly, and it was handled relatively quickly comparative to the other cases in like the Black Lives Matter stuff. Um, but the China thing over the past couple months was kind of mind blowing. I didn't think that they had stopped doing zero COVID. But Jupiter Neptune was really interesting. What was going on around here? Because I know the Ukraine war was really what was blowing up here. I think this is when people kind of got over again the vaccine, and this is when vaccine cards went away. Because I remember when I first moved up here to Denver, I couldn't do anything. Like, I'm not vaccinated, and also like, just to give you some context here, I was open-minded to it at the beginning because I was like, okay, let's see. But then I saw articles about how countries in Europe were saying it's giving kids or young men my age myocarditis. And I was like, dude, I'm not putting my heart health at risk when I'm already going to die of some heart disease. Like, that's something I joke about with astrology. Like, people are so like, how am I going to die? What does my chart say about how I'm going to die? It's like, you don't even need astrology. Just look at the statistics. Cancer, heart disease, or obesity or diabetes. Like, those statistically speaking, those are the three ways you're going to die. Why look at your chart for any of that? Unless it's like, you don't see those things happening, but I digress. But after I saw that, I wasn't even going to get it. So when I moved here to Denver, Vegas didn't have too many vaccine passport things, but Denver, it was like I couldn't go to venues. I couldn't go to, I don't think restaurants had them at the time, but I wasn't doing a lot because I couldn't do anything. People wanted me to be locked down and not have a job and take away my rights. So anyway. Yeah, but the Mars Saturn conjunction, that's what I was talking about. Those were more lockdowns in Shanghai and Shenzhen, which was a really big deal because what people don't understand about inflation is part of inflation was like, again, printing a lot of the money, but the other part of it was the supply chain crisis. Like, I mean, during this time too, all of those shipments in the port of Los Angeles were just piling up. All of this back ordered stuff in China was finally starting to come back in. And then when they did another lockdown, there was all these other delays. And so, I mean, I think that one of the biggest takeaways this year is Saturn Uranus, because that was the Saturn Uranus square too, was the supply chain stuff. And I talked about this in one of my delineation episodes, but Saturn square Uranus like, the one I was thinking of was in the 1970s, stagflation. There was the Iran oil crisis. Oh, what was going on in Iran during this time? Yes, there was the Iranian government was like, we're going to kill a bunch of women for not doing something. But there was something that was going on around this time with Iran, and I can't remember what the fuck it was. I can't remember. There was something going on here. I don't know if it was the nuclear deal not being signed, but it was stagflation. So we had inflation, interest rates rose, oil crisis, and well, that was what was happening. But we had a Saturn Uranus square in the 1970s when all of this was happening. It was Saturn in Leo squaring Uranus in Scorpio. And so it's just kind of like again, supply chain issues. I just think it was so dramatized this year because it's the Aquarius stuff, and we have so much preceding all this Aquarius stuff. Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat a little bit. Here's a hot take. How do you know how do know? Can you get pregnant? Do you guys know that video? Am I pregnant? I love that video. My hot take is they're not using astrology. I know people love to throw that JP Morgan quote of like, millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do. That's a fake quote, not real. I literally doubt maybe 5% of people in these high ranking areas use astrology. Maybe 5%, which is not a lot. I think this idea that these upper class people use this stuff is wrong. Because I've been in this because I don't know a fucking astrologer doing this shit. And if they are having astrologers, I don't know how much they know. That's not to say that they might have astrologers that know a lot. I just don't think this is happening. I really don't. So people might ask, well, then why do they do these things on these big astrology days? And it's like, because the astrology says that that's going to happen. They're not planning on doing these things when they're like, the astrology is good. The astrology says that those things are going to happen. And then those are the pawns. So for example, Pluto rules governments and corporations. So if you are someone in a big government position, you are under the control or the influence, so to say, of a Pluto transit. So it's not like they're planning this stuff. They're just like, they are the entity that exists, and the personification of that entity in the astrology is a planet. And so we follow those planets' transits to understand what those entities will do. So why Saturn rules authorities. Again, I don't think billionaires and a lot of these people are using astrology. They are just going purely off of fate and free will, or whatever you want to call it. And of course, because they are those powerful entities, it lines up with the astrology. So gosh, so that was the first part of 2022. And then I think things I think things really lightened up around this time, in the Pisces time. Man, it was such nostalgia. I went to this G. Jones concert around the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. In fact, I actually started my LLC on this Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. It was actually a pretty good election that I have. I went to this G. Jones concert and took fucking acid, and it was so sick. Oh, it was such a good show. It was so good. Yeah, well, this is a good point. Ronald Reagan did have an astrologer, but I don't know how much farther it goes. Like, again, this is why I'm saying like 5%. And it was also very controversial that he did that. That wasn't like oh my God, he has an astrologer, so now everyone's going to do astrology. That wasn't like a big popular thing. So again, how many of these people are doing it? I don't know. I would be curious about who their astrologers are. If they're like some, old woman smoking cigarettes or something. I don't know. But I think that there's this narrative that like every powerful person uses astrology, and I just don't think that's real. There is a lot of Wall Street astrologers, especially with the Bitcoin thing, but also, again, what is a lot? Like, this is why I'm thinking like 5%, in terms of like how many people use it. I think there's more people that don't and that would question it. I just think they don't admit it. I don't know about that one. I don't like, I'm sure there are people that are out there that use astrology but don't admit it, but I don't think they're that secretive. People love to gloat. Human nature is, wanting to share. People are like, oh, I don't want people to get into astrology. So my opinion is, and until I'm proven wrong, again, if you want to prove me wrong, if you want to find out what billionaires and what, presidents are using astrology, please prove me wrong. I want to know, but I don't think they are. I really don't. Like, if they were, they wouldn't be doing as much dumb shit as they do. But anyway, so around this time, what was going on in April? Does anyone remember what was going on in April? Because this was also around this Mercury retrograde. So what's funny about this Mercury retrograde, this was around the time where Elon Musk was like, I'm going to buy Twitter. And now also, too, we talked about this in Dan's podcast, Pluto Pilled, which is, again, I meant to say this earlier. That's available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The full episode of it is available on Spotify and Apple. He usually has like a paywall for it. Like on YouTube, only the first 30 minutes are available, but and it's mostly a visual podcast, but if you want to listen to it, go there. But this is when three things happened. Four things happened. One, Elon Musk was like, I'm going to buy Twitter, or I'm thinking about buying Twitter. And that was like starting the Mercury retrograde in Gemini, which then was followed up by Mars in Gemini, dealing with all of that. Two, this is when the Andrew Tate stuff started. Like Andrew Tate was already really popular and going around, but this was when it was like, Andrew Tate is a misogynist and we have to, ban him and all of that stuff. And monkeypox. Thank you. I forgot about monkeypox. Oh man. It was totally monkeypox. I forgot. 2022 was a lot. Like, this is what's hard about being an astrologer. I'm like in 2019, 2018, this amount of shit wasn't happening versus like every fucking month there's some crazy thing going on. Monkeypox was a big deal. Also, this was when Roe v. Wade got overturned, which was also a really big deal. Now, the Roe v. Wade thing is so interesting to me because, again, I like Donald Trump's opinion on this because he's like, why would you overturn Roe v. Wade? He's like, that's going to kill the Republican Party, which is like, yeah, that's something that like out of the very small amount of things Americans agree on, and I guarantee if I start being like, oh, like, again, for people in my, I have such a fucking wide audience. Some of you are going to be like, I love abortion. And some of you are going to be like, abortion is killing babies and it absolutely needs to be stopped. And we all need to be saved by Jesus. Have your opinions. That's fine. I do think though that like, I think Trump had a really good point of being like, why would we do that? Like that would lose all of our support, which is like, that's a fucking good point. But what was interesting about the Roe v. Wade thing being overturned was that, and this is where I also get more blue-pilled. Like, historically speaking, liberal justices, that sounds stupid. Liberal justices are much more favorable to people. And I would much rather have someone in the Supreme Court favorable more of people than of like, oh, when they passed, I always forget this court case, when they were like, corporations are people too, and they have just as many rights. I can't think of the thing. But anyway, Roe v. Wade getting overturned was a really big deal because, again, I think for one, this country's going to go through I don't even want to say civil war because it's not going to look like that. But I do see some kind of national divorce happening. And I really do think that these like culture war issues, which, I mean, you can kind of argue whether or not abortion's a culture situation or not. But I think that was really like I think the lockdowns for the right were a big like, whoa, like we need to get out of the left stuff. And I think the abortion rights being overturned was a big wake up call to the left being like, this is not good. So I do think that you're going to see this turning point. Oh, it's New Year's on the people. Oh, no, it's not New Year's yet. Sorry. If I recall, the inauguration was either late or earlier than it was usually have been. It changed the planets in the midheaven, but didn't think void of course moon into effect. Interesting. I don't know. But yeah, the Roe v. Wade being overturned was really crazy. But I mean, the thing is though, like that kind of, and I said this about Venus retrograde in Capricorn, like I didn't think that it was going to happen this time because again, this was also the leaked memo. But one of my predictions for the Venus retrograde in Capricorn was that Roe v. Wade is going to get overturned, and like that was just inevitable. And so something I was frustrated with was how many people were surprised if like that Roe v. Wade got overturned. It was like, dude, it was on like shaky ground and every justice knew it. So, and also too, when people are like, the Republicans are trying to take our rights, it's like literally the Democrats have been saying we are going to protect your abortion rights for 30 years. And that never happened. So it's like why people still think that the Democratic Party's the party of like all of these good things is just like not true because they're not going to do anything that they say. Because again, if they did, you would have abortion rights. But I digress. The Andrew Tate thing though was a big deal because that's still a big thing right now too. And me and Dan talked about this because when we started having all of these Aries stuff, and this was also the Uvalde shooting, which was a really big deal. The Uvalde shooting was a super big deal because I think that also woke people up to specifically the very hard right, Blue Lives Matter people being like, I think that woke people like, again, if you've been paying attention for the past, I don't know, 150 years, you would know that the cops really don't have the people's backs or sides, and American cops, again, I think most individual cops are good people and that they go in there for good reasons, but it's also such a corrupt institution that they have no power and that it's easier to fall under the pressures of that system than it is to beat the system. That's why you have people like Chris Dorner, which I don't know if you guys knew who Chris Dorner was. It was one of the most wild days of being a California citizen. Chris Dorner was a Los Angeles police officer who saw the corruption in the LAPD, tried to report it, and they fired him. So he sniped a bunch of head LAPD's like family members, and then there was this huge chase that led out to this huge shootout in Big Bear. That was one of the most wild. I just remember coming home from school that day and be like, "What the fuck is going on? Like, this guy's like murdering cops' family members like from a sniper rifle." But I think the Uvalde shooting really woke people up to like, wow, the police actually don't know what they're doing in a way that was like both sides could recognize. Which is important because when you start talking about, never heard of that. Some people have never heard of Chris Dorner, which blows my mind. Like it's literally one of the most wild stories. And it happened in 2011, 2012, I think. It's a really wild story. But anyway, and I bring this stuff up because, and I said this so many times on my weekly horoscopes. What was going on between May and June, right? So the end of May, beginning of June is a microcosm for what is happening for the next few years between 2025 and 2026. And that is because this is where the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is happening. Saturn-Neptune, and watch, let me show you guys. So this inside ring is May of 2022. Let's look at 2025 real quick. I want to show you guys something. So we got to go back this way. So when we get to the end of 2020, did this really change? Damn. Okay, hold on. Fuck. I got to get this right. Okay, let's do this. We'll keep it there. Save. Let's save this stupid chart. Fucking Astro Gold. Also, anyway, Uvalde was crazy to me. Like, it's just one of those things of like, the cops didn't do their job. What a shocker. But let's look at 2024. So this is the next election. After the next election, watch this. Dude, what the fuck? Okay. I hate Astro Gold. I fucking hate Astro Gold so much. But anyway, let's just do this. Let's just show you what's going on. So this is January of 2025. Watch this. So monkeypox, the Uvalde shooting, and what was the other thing? Oh, and Roe v. Wade got overturned during the Mars-Jupiter conjunction. Now look at this. Venus is going to so Neptune's at 29, the North Node is at 27, and Saturn's right here. So that means this is the middle of eclipse season. So this is March of 2025. We're going to be having eclipses in this area. Venus will station retrograde in Aries. Mercury will then come in and station retrograde with Venus. So we have a Mercury retrograde, a Venus retrograde in this area of the sky. Then we have an eclipse. And right after that, Mercury and Venus will conjunct. Oh, what was the other? The Jupiter-Neptune conjunction was also what was that thing called? It was the information board. It was like, the Ministry of Truth. The Ministry of Truth. The Ministry of Truth, which is so important because this whole idea, like the Ministry of Truth thing was so dystopian. It was vomit inducing almost. But you're going to see this is like an authority of truth, which is also what they do in Iran. But that was what was happening during the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, was this Ministry of Truth thing going on. But so during this time, right, Mercury's retrograde, Venus will retrograde. They'll go back and go at these same degrees, conjoining the North Node. And then Neptune enters Aries. Mercury stations on Saturn. Venus stations on Saturn. Mercury goes in and conjoins Neptune and Aries. Let me move this a little bit. And this is now April of 2025. Now we're looking at April of 2025, okay? And then Venus will go into Aries, and then Saturn goes into Aries and doesn't conjoin Neptune just yet. Great question, Sydney. Yes, Saturn Neptune is going to be more Ministry of Truth. What I would argue, Jupiter is a ministry. I think of ministry as more of a religious term, or like a church type term. Saturn Neptune tells me like authority of truth. But yeah, this is definitely what's happening. Well, and this is also because look at this. Uranus is going to go into Gemini, Pluto's in Aquarius, Saturn's Neptune, is in Aries. Like, this is the augmented reality singularity effect. This is when digital twinning is going to become a thing. This is when you really can't work unless it's online, and then AI is going to get so powerful that there's going to be all these job issues. This is going to get shit this is when shit's going to get crazy. This is when Russia's going to have a big thing. I've said this before. Saturn Neptune in 1917, Russian Revolution. Saturn Neptune in 1953, Stalin dies, changes the course of the USSR. Saturn Neptune 1991 with Uranus, the USSR collapses. Saturn Neptune here in Aries, we're going to have a whole nother Russian story. And also Putin has Saturn Neptune in his chart. So this is why. So Saturn, so we had the Uvalde shooting, we had monkeypox, we had Roe v. Wade overturned. When Mars can join Jupiter in this degree, and why is that important? Mars rules Aries, and so this is the ruler of that plant, of that sign, and Jupiter plants seeds. Jupiter literally rules semen. Jupiter is like the beginning of something. And you had Mars and Jupiter conjoin an Aries sign, right? So that started something that you're going to see the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, not complete, but like take over almost in a sense. So this is why I've been really talking about May and June's a really big deal of this past year. But I digress yet again. Let's go back to, now that we're in June. Oh, this is 2021. I was like, this doesn't look right. Let's see. Look. Oh, I finally got a downvote on this live stream. Oh, well. Aries equals bone ash templates, astronomy. No, Aries is like more like blood and swords. Capricorn rules bones, technically. How are you guys feeling? What are you guys doing for this New Year's? Take a little pause real quick. How are we feeling for this New Year's? I've been on for an hour. All right, my battery life is still good. I might have to take a pause for a minute too at some point, but we'll keep going. Yeah, what are you guys up to for the New Year's Eve? Anything crazy going on? Let's take a break from the astrology for a minute. Let's just talk casual. I need a second. Thank you for loving it. I appreciate it. I gotta start being like other people and being like, I'm only reading super chat comments. I'm trying to avoid all the crazy firework launchers. Dude, I have such mixed feelings about fireworks because like I love fireworks, but also I'm so like the dogs, and it's loud, and the birds. Like I have mixed feelings. I think fireworks are super cool, but also I totally understand the fucking problems that they have. Got COVID, gonna rest and relax tonight. Bummer. So glad to see you. Just loving you. Working in morning. Yeah, right. This is work for me. I'm fucking technically working. Here's a question. Someone said earlier in the live chat that they didn't like my new setup. How do you guys like the new setup? I'm working on the audio. I just got this, lapel mic, and I can't fucking get it to sound good. And the research on lapel mics to get them to sound good is like so fucking hard to find. But how do you guys like the new setup in terms of the green screen? I'm actually really loving the green screen setup. I know you guys hate the suit. Holy fuck, I know it. Jesus Christ. All of the comments are so annoying about the suit thing. No suit today? I'm not presenting. I'm just fucking hanging out on a live stream. Glad some people love the suits. I think the whole weatherman thing is clever as fuck. Yes, thank you. Enjoying hubby later. Ooh. Professional fireworks okay. Residents acting like mental patients not okay. That's an interesting take. Well, I mean, like, my parents have like some property out in Montana that we go and shoot some fireworks at. So it's one of those things of like, and like also too, like when I lived in LA, when the Dodgers won during the pandemic, it was almost as if everyone in Los Angeles spent their whole stimulus money on fireworks. It was the most insane thing I ever saw. Oh, what? Marin Almond plugged me earlier this month? Shout out Marin. What did she plug me on? I want to know now. She doesn't follow me on anything. I feel like we're not friends anymore or something, so I don't know. I kind of missed you power fisting the huge mic. I know. I love the quality of this mic, but so like, I don't know. Anyway, I might go back to it just because I care more about sound quality than anything else. Enjoying the champagne, great work. I'm enjoying some water. I drank a Red Bull earlier. That's why I'm able to be like, typically this is like my bedtime. I'm like old now. The monitor is, I know it is, but again, this computer I just ordered. I just spent so much fucking money on a new computer setup. Like I can't believe I did it, but like this computer sounds like a jet engine most of the day, and it has been a workhorse for the past 2.5 years, 3 years that I've had it. So I have to get a new computer, which I did. This is why I was like, send me some super chats, support me on Patreon, book a consultation. I need the money. I could use the money. I like to stay home for New Year's. My dog is following me around. The suit is like a dead guy. The suit is like dead guy. Goodwill finds. Boo. Shit. Oh, and so many people. I actually went off on my last weekly horoscope, but I had my editor edit it out. So many people were like, "Your suit's too big. That's not the right fitting suit." They're coats. They were fucking coats. Like, I don't know if you guys know what a coat is, but it's bigger than a suit jacket. I have suit jackets. I have a longer coat, and then I have like a full-on trench coat. And why do I wear that? Because it was like 0 degrees, and I have a fireplace in here, and it gets too hot when I'm performing, so I turn it off. I need air, so I open up the door, but then it gets too cold because I don't have temperature control in here, so I wear the coat, and it looks good. How about me tonight later? My celebration, I'm going to bed after this. I'm still sober. I'm almost 60 days sober, which is sadly the longest I've been without weed since, like, I don't know, I was like 16. So not doing much. Too true, Mr. Marbles. No COVID here, but a double ear. Oh man, the ear infection. Have you guys ever seen that meme of like men? A woman could experience what or it's like when a woman gets pregnant, she gets to experience what it's like when a man gets like the flu. That's how I felt when I had an ear infection. That took me down. I like, as a grown man, that was like the worst ever. Well, I'm in my podcast. I'll be wearing my normal clothes. Like in my podcast, I'll be like, because I'm going to be doing more delineation episodes. They'll be normal. But I like the weatherman thing, being a little bit more professional with it. Yeah, hi-fi. I run it. I have a DBX 286S. I did a video about my YouTube setup. So it's got a preamp, a compressor, a de-esser, an enhancer, and an expander and a gate. So like this is super dialed in. Oh, and my Vlogmas videos. All right, I'll check those out. You need a prop, maybe a staff or a pointer. One of my dreams is to go to one of the Renaissance fairs and get, like, I want a wizard staff. I want a wizard costume. Like, I'm a wizard at this point. Like, I've accepted that, and I need a wizard staff. Trump is the great disruptor, doesn't belong to the club. Obama pointed out approximately 20 years ago, the swamp matrix is fighting to stop him. He set them back. My problem with Trump, though, like, again, I think looking back, I can look back at like Trump memes and I'm like, God, what it was just compared it to the dystopia, like back when Trump was president, I was like, fuck Trump, he's the worst, blah, blah, blah. And then looking back, I'm like, it was not that bad. And at least he was funny, versus watching Joe Biden is just sad. But I also just don't think, like, Trump didn't do anything. And he had like the worst people around him. So it's hard for me to like be like, Trump's great. Too much swearing, have some ice cream, chill. You must be new here. Got any music ready to release yet? No, I'm working on it, okay? It takes a long time. I'm doing astrology stuff, but I do have some music. Like, I'm probably not going to be able to release anything until like March or April because I need to get a backlog of some songs together to where I have a consistent drop thing. I'm learning more about the marketing part of it. It really brings a lighthearted comedy dynamic to the forecast. Great. Thank you, Tyler. Shout out, Tyler. Instead of coats and suits, why don't you do your own merch and wear that instead? I get this a lot. Here's my issue. For one, I think I've kind of come to the conclusion where I don't think I'm ever going to have a sponsor in my channel. I just don't feel integral about it. I've gotten hit up for sponsorships and there's things I've been interested in, but I don't want to huck things towards you. Like, you guys got to understand, like, my brand, my reputation is like my honesty and my integrity. I could print out t-shirts that say funny things, but I don't believe in the value of that. Like, there's ideas that I've had in my head that might be funny for a t-shirt, but to go through all of that just to make $20 off of you guys, it's like, for example, when I do my music, I'm gonna have shirts for my music because I believe in that. But like, I'm struggling with because so many people have told me to make a t-shirt, and I'm just like, what do you want? My logo? Like, you're gonna wear my logo? Like, why? Like, I think that's so dumb. And no offense if you want something like that, but it's just much more of like, I feel not integral, hucking out and shilling out bullshit for you guys. Like, I really like that this channel so far has been mostly you guys support. It's mostly supported through consultations, but through my Patreon, through the ad revenue I get on YouTube, which isn't all that much. But I just don't feel comfortable just hucking shit out at you guys just to make a quick buck, to be honest with you. Any new tattoo plans? When I don't have to spend $7,000 on a computer, which I just did. Eventually, probably next year, maybe 2024, I'll be getting some more tattoos. It's been on my mind for a lot, but I've just had to have money go here and there and all this other stuff. How does it feel being sober? To be honest with you guys, it was an eclipse thing. And I still identify as a stoner. Like, I still identify as a cokehead. Like, when I was 21, 22, well, I wasn't really doing that much coke. Well, maybe I was. Like, I fucking love coke. Like, that was like, I'm an upper, like Xanax, like lean. No, I never did that stuff. I'm like, I don't fucking heroin. I never did that stuff. But like, man, Adderall, cocaine. I fucking love uppers. And I'm much more of a stoner. Like, over the past few years, I was really just smoking weed. But I just didn't want to be inebriated. Like, I was tired of just being high all day. And maybe I might go back. Like, I wanted to give it at least 90 days of no weed, no booze. And I'm not a big drinker. Like, stopping drink. If I had to stop drinking for the rest of my life, that wouldn't be that hard. Weed was a more difficult one for me. I've been open about this on both my weekly and my Patreon, but I'm back on cigarettes. Hopefully tonight's the night I could drop them. I don't want to go into the new year doing it. So my problem with my sobriety right now is struggling with cigarettes. Because I got back on them during a stressful event that I went through during the eclipses, and I feel so shitty about it because I was so good about not smoking cigarettes. But the way I was able to quit smoking cigarettes the last time was I just replaced it with weed, which set myself up for failure. So it feels good not being high. Honestly, I have a lot more ambition. I'm super fucking focused. I have a ton of energy. I don't want to be high right now. Like, the idea of being high sounds great, but I don't want the reality of being high. But I am struggling with cigarettes again. So sorry I'm not perfect. I know. Anyway. Suit doesn't go hard enough. Needs a full wizard wardrobe. Send me some fucking cash and let me get a fucking full-on wizard suit. Maybe one day I'll do maybe next Halloween I'll do like a wizard outfit. And I'll do like a lightning strikes and like the chart will be a part of the sky. That would be fun. Oh, there's so many comments. Hold on. I'm like way far behind. No wars with Trump. Yeah, that was the only thing I will say about Trump. There was no wars. Swearing is the spice of language. Shout out Timothy Woods for the super chat. Staying home this New Year's Eve. Thank you for your honest takes on astrology this year. Thank you. I appreciate when people can recognize my honesty, because that's all, dude, as an astrologer, that's all I can fucking do is just like be honest. And like, you know, some of you are going to hate me. Some of you are going to love me. And I can't conform to how I think society wants me to be. I can't. And I refuse to. And that's lost me a lot of people this year. I'm not friends with a lot of people because of the things that I do and say, but I'd rather be honest than a fucking liar. I'd rather be honest and hated than a liar and loved, or I should say liked. Thoughts on Andrew Tate, or is there only filtered answer to that question? Well, I just read a thing today about how the whole pizza box story of him getting arrested was fake, which is like, yeah, you really think they went after him because they saw a pizza box on his live stream? Like, social media, people on social media are fucking dumb. I think Andrew Tate has a lot of really good points about a lot of stuff. There's things that I think like are corny about him, but I don't like the thread and how horrible and misogynist he is. It's like, not really. He says a lot of stuff that's very true and that a lot of people agree with. And I don't really see it as all that bad, to be honest. Like, I think it's just society right now is so conditioned to be like anything where a man is like masculine, and I know that might even be controversial, but it's like because I struggle with this stuff. It's like people call me toxic masculine. I'm like, when the fuck am I ever saying anything remotely like toxic masculinity? But it's also any form of masculinity is toxic, and that just weaponizes my own gender and sex. Like it's everyone's allowed to be whatever they want to be, but a man can't be a man. And I think the hypocrisy is really frustrating, especially when men kill themselves more, men don't go to school, they have all these other issues in the court, and with child support they lose everything. It's like people just want to rag on men, and so then you get people like Andrew Tate, and you have all these men listen to him. They say, no, that's dangerous, that's bad. It's like, how about we listen to why are men connecting more with that and resonating more with that message than why not ask that question than just being like, oh, this is bad, this is dangerous. That's like, the reason why I partied and started doing drugs once I moved out, well, I was doing drugs when I was living with my mom, is because my mom tried to shelter me and protect me from everything she deemed as Satan. And so that made me go, well, fuck you. I'm going to go do whatever I want. And I think this idea that trying to control society and protect them is actually going to create for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if you repress this whole manly shit, your toxic masculinity, you need to do this, you need to do that, you're going to get this reaction of people going even more to the extreme, which anyway, let me see if I can quickly go through these comments. Creepy Greta and her gang saw the pizza boxes in course. I still don't understand how Greta Thunberg was even involved in this. Like, everyone's like, Greta Thunberg got him arrested. I'm like, I was reading the tweets. I don't know if I'm dumb or I have a cognitive disconnect here, but I don't get how she was involved. It just so happened there was a tweet. He didn't say anything to her of like being like, let work for my, OnlyFans account thing, Greta. Like, I don't think he said that. Integrity is key. Thank you. I regularly quit weed at the winter solstice. Nice. You rock the Neptune transit at 21. It's tough to be dependent. Yes. Pores don't breathe when clogged with ink. We breathe through skin. We breathe through our lungs. Our skin is important, but also I want to look cool. And also, I like having tattoos. They feel good. As a Pisces with Sagittarius rising in Sagi, Moon, my addiction was not sobriety. Surprisingly. Steven the Jupiterian, what the fuck are you saying? But like, is weed not way better as an alternative to cigarettes? I mean, boy, is that a fucking box to open up. Like when I was smoking a lot of weed when I first moved back to Denver, I was smoking like an ounce a week. Like I was fucking chief and big. But the problem with weed now is that it's like acid. Like I go and buy the dirt cheap weed because this fucking $40 a gram crazy. I'm not trying to get high off my rocker. I'm just trying to get a little stoned. And I buy like the organic. I buy these stupid cigarettes, the American Spirit organic ones, whatever the fuck that means. I don't know. It makes me feel better. So every time I quit weed, I pick up ciggies. Yeah, your merch doesn't have to have Give Me Attention logo, thinking you can have some cam things say. Yeah, and I've thought about having different things on my merch that would be like, if I do merch, it's got to be something that I would wear and that I think is cool, and I just haven't had that clarity yet. Because for me in my head right now, so much of merch is just hucking shit. So many people just huck shit for a quick buck. And don't get me wrong, I would love to make more money. I would love to make more money and have a product, but I want to have a product I believe in. My addiction was never with drugs or alcohol. As the Sun in Pisces with Sagittarius rising and Sagittarius surprisingly. Sex was my addiction. Oh yeah, I've got. We'll put that to the side. Base take on Tate. Thanks. Hanging with you dudes. Hearts. Great work, buddy. I'm in Aspen. Come up again. Dude, I went to Aspen for my birthday. Oh my God. Did I get to tell you guys this story? I was in Aspen for my birthday and I went to the most expensive restaurant there. It was like a $400 meal. And next to me were these straight up like deep state security lizard people. And I sat in complete silence listening to this old couple talk. They were talking about Anthony Blinken's kids and where they went to school and how they all know each other. And I was just like, who are these people sitting next to me that know? They know Condoleezza Rice. They knew their kids and their kids knew their kids. And it was like it was just mind blowing because I went to Aspen the same time that the National Security Council meeting in Aspen that happens every summer was. So there was like a bunch of what's the president's security thing? The president's security. I forgot what it's called. Yeah, society has emasculated men. We're being ruled by our enemies. Manly men are a lot harder to control than low T men. Confidence given result by weak men. Yes, I believe, and that's also cultural Marxism. Something I would really recommend if you guys want to get a super red pill based like conversation is Dan Shukies over at Cosmic Keys Podcast did an episode with this dude from the Air Force. I think he was from the Air Force, but this dude wrote this book about cultural Marxism in the military. And it was fucking mind blowing. You guys need to go listen to that podcast. This is an astrologer who got this military guy to talk about cultural Marxism in the military on his astrology podcast. It was super crazy. Yeah, my only question is like people are like, oh, it's my only question with Tate is I'm curious about the charge since it's a sex trafficking thing. Is like, could I imagine a reality or scenario where that's a real thing and he's found guilty? Totally. Honestly, he's like, I want to evade taxes from America. That's why I moved to Romania, all this stuff. I could see that being a reality, but also I can imagine a reality in which there are fabricated stories to get him in trouble. So I'm actually really curious about what ends up happening with this. Vape, no. A vape almost killed me. That's what actually made me quit smoking cigarettes and quit nicotine the first time. Because I was huffing 4 Juul pods a day. So that's 1 pack of Juul pods a day back in 2020. And I thought I was going to have a brain aneurysm and die. Oh, I'm almost done getting through these comments. Natives, and that's what I smoke. Yeah. Secret Service. Thank you. I could not think of the name. Secret Service. They're not that secret. Woo, got through all of those comments. Gosh, all right, let's keep going. 2022. God, I don't even want to keep going through 2022. I don't want to be reminded of what I had to go through. I just want to talk about. I'm having fun reading the comments with you guys. I'm sure whoever's watching might be just annoyed that I'm not talking about what I said I was going to. Liz, what's up, Liz? Liz is on the Patreon. She's dope as fuck. Why aren't you guys on the Patreon? Why? High fives on the Patreon. Who else is here that's on the Patreon? I think that's it that I can really tell. Gemini season was fun, or at least Venus and Gemini was. And then we had Mars and Taurus. What happened at the beginning of July? God, there's so much going on this year. I kind of just want to fast forward to August. Oh, on my birthday, did I tell you guys I got in a car wreck on my birthday? So I'm in a 3rd house year of short distance travel. My 3rd house ruler is fallen. It's Saturn and Aries on K2. And literally, astrology is so real. The day of my birthday, I got in a car wreck. As I get out of this wreck and I pull over, my phone alerts goes Mars hour. Like if you have Time Nomad, is it Time Nomad? What do you guys not have Time Nomad? Look at this. Time Nomad. It tells you what time it is astrologically. It's Mars hour right now. It's funny. That actually probably just started. But yeah, I got in this car wreck and I looked at my phone and it was like Mars hour. I was like, oh yeah, no fucking shit. But anyway, what's funny about that was I got hit by this car. I didn't get hit. I got in a car wreck. It wasn't my fault. This guy pulled out in front of me. It was an Uber, and it was funny because I just avoided, like I was making a left turn. It was a two lane left turn, and I was in the right lane. Another driver was in the left, and we both made this left turn. And this guy almost pushed me into a light pole, so I just ran around him. And I was like, "What the fuck?" And then this other guy pulled out and hit me, and I almost went head on to this other car, but I was able to like avoid that. And then it was an Uber driver. Homie didn't speak a lick of English. He was like, "Everything's cool," and I was like, "No, I need your fucking insurance, homie." I got his insurance. He never answered any of his phone calls. I finally got in contact with Uber. Uber finally claimed liability. They paid for my car. So I had like $6,000 worth of repairs for my car. It was gone for like a month or two. I got this rental car that Uber paid for. And then I got in a car accident in that car. Some guy, it was a one-way street. So we're all going one way. I'm in this lane and he tries to like make this left turn in front of me. And then, his insurance lady was a fucking cunt because I was like, is this guy's fault? And I don't even want to go into that. But anyway, I just yesterday, I had to take a phone call because Enterprise Rent-A-Car was trying to charge me for this damage on this car when the other driver's insurance claimed liability. They were like, yeah, we claim liability. And I was like, okay, cool. I don't have to deal with it. So this third house year for me with my shitty third house ruler has been so much about just shit car issues. Oh, and then right after I got my car back, I had to spend about $3,000 on my car because the the transmission coolant was getting mixed in with the oil. So it was, and I don't know what the fuck was up with that. It was complicated. So I had to pay $3,000. There's been like 10 grand dumped in my car this year, which was insane. Oh, that was one thing I said. So when I said on July 6th or July 5th, Biden would die. I still have a prediction that he will not make it to the 2024 election. He's not going to run again. And I almost think that he's going to get out of office. I think he's going to give up. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I predicted that I thought he would die this day. And I did a video about that on my Patreon, but he didn't die on this day, but he did get COVID on this day, which was really interesting. And I was really close. It was like, when I was expecting a home run, I only got to first base. So that was another prediction. But then the Mars Uranus North Node thing. This was surprisingly the most disappointing transit of this year. I was really expecting a lot more of the gas stuff, like the oil, the gas. This was when gas prices were like $4.50 here in Denver. Like in LA, they were about $9. But I was really expecting something way bigger on this day. The only thing that happened that was big was and this is something that the media did not talk about, was the farmer protest. Guys, I talked about this on my Patreon. They are trying to, and this is something, okay, riddle me this. How did the white man kill off the Native Americans? There's a whole bunch of, I have a lot of nuanced opinions about the whole Native American white people stuff, but it was definitely true that we committed a genocide against them. And we did that through killing the buffalo, because their whole Native American culture rode off the buffalo. There used to be 40 million buffalo roaming through the Great Plains, all the way from California, all the way to fucking like the Appalachian. But why? So during that transit, so we decided, we're going to kill off the buffalo because that's going to starve them. That transit, so the last of the buffalo was killed. I did a ton of research into this, and I did this on my Patreon. Saturn and Aquarius, right? So the dystopian authoritarian government stuff, squaring Pluto and Rahu in Taurus. You see all of this research and all of this big money going to meat's bad for you. Cow farts cause climate change. They want to get meat and cows away from people. And even if you're vegan, you have to understand how horrible of that would be like if carnivore people like me were like, let's stop growing plants so the vegans can't eat anything. Like, trying to eliminate someone's food source, and especially, who does this affect the most? Getting rid of something like beef? That affects indigenous people, lower class people, and third world countries all over the world. So this idea that we need to eliminate meat is like super genocidal, but in my opinion. But the farmer protest, like, people don't understand how big of a deal that was. Like, pretty much the not Amsterdam, Holland, was it Holland? I always get those countries mixed up. What fucking ever country it was. Pretty much the government bought up all this farmland, and they're going to be building houses on it for immigrants to come in. And that's already, like, Europe already imports more food than they export. Like, America is one of the rare countries that actually exports more food than we import. But the fact that they just took away one of the biggest protein sources in Europe is a big deal when it comes to the food crisis. Is that, like, you're going to see a lot of war in Europe. You're going to see a lot of starvation. You're going to see a lot of energy. You're going to see Holland. Thank you. It's Holland. But that was what was going on here. And they were throwing shit at Parliament. Like, that was super awesome. Farmer protests in Holland is still on. I didn't know that it was still going on. But that was a big deal. Like, and that's going to be a big deal. People really need to, like, this is another reason why I try to tell people to get more into carnivore, because, like, it's just like the economics of meat and history, along with like social control, are all linked together in the astrology. Netherlands. Yeah, well, aren't the Netherlands? I just saw this Seinfeld quote. It was like, where's the Netherlands? And then Jerry's like, it's Holland. And then, or it's Amsterdam. And then George is like, but then what's Holland? I feel the same way. Anyway, let's keep going. This is when Jupiter went to Aries and stationed retrograde. This Jupiter and Aries transit was really interesting because it just felt like, sorry, I'm checking the battery life on my camera. I got to kind of move forward a little bit. We're almost halfway through my battery. Well, that's what they say. Like when you watch all the vegan propaganda films, it's like cows are killing the environment, even though there used to be 40 million buffalo roaming around America and everything was fine. But now we just have cows. And don't get me wrong, like there's parts of farming that could definitely be better. But that is something that you can change through the free market and not through legislation, essentially. Stayed at a hotel last night. All I could think of was George Costanza asking for one tuck, one no tuck, because it should geek out the sheets very much. Read Rob Wolf's Sacred Cow book. I will. That sounds interesting. But Jupiter and Aries, I kind of want to talk about Jupiter and Aries on a personal level because Jupiter was so, what I talked about was like Jupiter and Aries is like you just have to Kool-Aid man it. You just kind of have to go for it and wing it. And, Jupiter retrograde was kind of like this, ooh, wow, can I do that? Like, wow, I need to actually relearn. And sometimes you need to just kind of throw yourself in the deep end to figure out if you can swim or not. And I think Jupiter stationing retrograde was really kind of like realizing, oh, we need to learn how to swim better. And that's why I'm excited for Jupiter and Aries now, because there's much more of a clearer mindset of how we're going to go about it. What else was going on? Yeah, I think the most disappointing transit was this Mars-Uranus North Node conjunction. I was really expecting something bigger. It was very disappointing. This was also when inflation was the highest. This was the Saturn-Uranus square. God, inflation was crazy. Gas prices were fucking crazy this year. Then Mercury entered shadow, and then we got that Mercury retrograde. This was arguably the best time of this year, was this Mercury retrograde trining Mars opposite Jupiter. We did the astrology in I did a picnic here at Observatory Park, which is actually not that far from my house. I had like 30 or 40 people show up throughout the day. I spent like $400 on pizza for everybody, and I had way too much pizza. But it was awesome. I wish more people would have come. I want to do an event. I've learned that I need to actually, like, for one, I need to have a certain paywall with an event next time. I don't think I'll ever do a free event again. But I definitely do want to do more events. I definitely need to be meeting more of you, because how many people are here? There's 140 of you here right now. Shout out to all 140 of you that are fucking watching this right now. I think also too, just something I'm so appreciative of is like, I've been very vocal about some of my opinions on here, and dude, like, I'm reading the comments. You could probably tell a lot of people are red pill based. I have very wide audience of clients. Like, I have people on both spectrums, on up to extremes, and I just appreciate that I can be honest with myself, and that I can not just have an echo chamber of everyone that just says, agrees with the same things that I do. But I just appreciate all of my followers that allow me to be honest. And I know when I say stuff, people are like cringe, or that not everyone's going to agree with everything that I say, but I appreciate that I can at least be honest and still have you respect enough to continue watching me and continue supporting me. Like, it's amazing how many people in this world, in terms of like YouTubers or social media influencers, feel trapped by their following and that they have to be this certain way, otherwise they'll lose their followers. And I'm like, I just know that, like, now that I'm honest and that I can be as integral as I can, and again, I'm not going to get everything right. I'm not going to be perfect. But as long as I can be honest, like, I know that whoever's following me and watching me is like real. Like, that's what I fucking love about my job and what I do, is like if I was being fake, then my audience would be fake, right? Versus if I'm like, I've had people be like, you're spreading too much misinformation, I'm done watching you, or you're, a Trump supporter, which I don't really claim myself as a Trump supporter. I don't really claim myself as Republican or Democrat. But people throw these labels on me and they're like, I can't watch you anymore. And it's like, all right, see you later. It's not that big of a deal. I really would just want like, and again, I'm the same way. If people are super blue pilled, super red pilled, like I'm pretty much open to all. Of course, again, if we all sat down in a room, we're probably going to disagree on a lot of stuff, but that's not really the point here. The point is to talk about astrology and to actually just have this conversation. Like, I don't see that many astrologers just talking about like the astrology and like talking about these trending things. Like they're also scared to talk about, they're just like, just want to stay in line and say, whatever CNN says, that it's like not, I don't know. Anyway, but this was my favorite part of the year, in my opinion, was this Mercury retrograde in Libra. 'Cause this was a balancing act. This was just like where we go. And this was like right when Mars station direct. And I just did my January 2023 horoscopes on Patreon. Why aren't you guys on the Patreon? Hi-Fi, Liz, tell everyone how good the Patreon is. Sell this shit for me. But I just posted them and I talked about this Mars stationing direct. Mars is going to station direct here at the end of January. What was going on around the September time when Mars entered shadow? Because whatever was going on around the beginning of September when Mercury stationed retrograde, trining Mars, when Mars entered shadow, we're going to be coming back to here just at the end of January. And think of what's been happening since September. I feel like so much has happened since September. Thank you. We need people with strong integrity, authenticity. Your value might not agree, but I respect opinions and make my own. And that's my biggest, like, I've been really thinking about the philosophies of my channel. And one is like, think for yourself. And that's why I kind of do what I do. Like, I'm a big person of like, just because you heard it from me doesn't mean you need to like agree with me. But like, I got to be honest with like how I feel about stuff. It's just part of my human nature. I've got some other stuff too, but like, you got to make your own opinions about this stuff, guys. Like, I mean, even with astrology, because there's so much dogma in astrology. It's like whole sign houses versus Placidus, and are we doing sidereal or are we doing tropical? And it's just like, you look into this yourself and you come to a conclusion because you're the only one that can really make the judgment for what is best for you. Disinformation agent extraordinaire, LOL. Many Leos have the same issues. Not many people like being people so honest. We are called brutal. Yeah, I know that like David Palmer, Leo King, he deals with that. He's very brutally honest in terms of like he just goes off the fucking cuff. And I mean, I really look up to him for that. He was a big reason. I don't know if you guys know this. He's the reason I started my YouTube channel. I was a big fan of him, and I went to one of his conferences in Vegas. And after that, I went back to Denver. I was in this personal development thing. I told them about I wanted like astrology, and they were like, "You should be an astrologer." So I called David, and I was like, I want to be an astrologer. How do I do that? He was like, get a camera, get your phone, go out somewhere quiet, shoot a video. So that's what I did. So David Palmer's the reason why I got a YouTube channel. How much is the Patreon? $5 or $10? Oh my God, the Patreon. Is it New Year's yet? Oh, it's about to be New Year's here in a second, huh? Yeah, Peas and Butter's here too. Midnight in 10 minutes. Man, I might go smoke a cigarette. If I went on a break for 5 minutes, would you guys be cool with that? I wouldn't cut the live stream, but just to go smoke real quick. RSPM represent. What's up? The Gordon White shit. Dude, Gordon's so fucking cool. I was so glad I got to talk to him because I was a big fan for him for a while. Oh, yeah, the drunk astrology. You guys don't know this, but I got Chris really drunk for that podcast. Like, I don't think people understand how turnt he was. And he wasn't like out of control, but he's not a big drinker. But we went to Barry's off Broadway, and I think we had like 2 drinks there, and then we figured out a venue to do it at. We recorded that at Punch Bowl Social. Punch Bowl Social had this room where like you could rent out, and we fucking set the whole podcast up there. And I was like, dude, we got to get drunk before this. And so I fucking bought a little 5th of Jameson, and we took like 3 shots in the parking lot, and he was already buzzed. And then Micah comes in, and she had like these drinks that I didn't think had alcohol in them. So I poured more alcohol into them, but she's like, there's already alcohol in these. And so there was a lot of alcohol that night. We were the Drunk Astrology podcast. Chris was lit. I was fucking lit. It was fucking fun. What is Patreon? Thank you for asking this question. I feel like I talk about Patreon and I'm like looking at like my Patreon, like, do people not? Patreon is a website in which you give me $5 or $10 a month in trade. For one, it's to support my channel, but I offer things like a Discord group chat. If you don't know what Discord is, it's like an app where you can have like a big group chat. And I've got a big group chat with a bunch of different channels to talk about a bunch of different things. I do a live monthly overview of the month every month. So you can be, if you like this live stream and you want to see more of them, I do them over on my Patreon. I do a monthly rising sign horoscope over there. So if you want a horoscope for your rising sign, go over there. If you want an Ask Me Anything, I do an Ask Me Anything episode. I do those over there. Anyway, I think I am going to go smoke a cigarette real fast. I wish I could smoke in here. Like every now and then I'll watch a video from David Palmer. He's like just smoking, talking about astrology. Like, God, it sounds fucking nice. Anyway, one, I have a question for you guys. Since yeah, my camera's got 2 battery lives left, so this might not be as high detailed here pretty soon. But as I go, when I come back here, I want you to think about, for one, what specific things do you want me to talk about 2021? What transits do you want me to talk about 2021, as well as like certain social events that happened in 2021? And two, yeah, I would just go a little bit more into the questions, but leave me something to come back to specifically about 2021 in terms of like, what specific transits do you want me to talk about? So I'll be back. I can't believe my live stream's just going to be going on while I'm leaving. All right, I'll be right back. Two-hour live stream, I think, is the longest I've actually been too. Yeah, 2 hours. Typically, my Patreon ones are only like an hour and a half at most. I'm watching myself enter the room right now. Oh, damn, there's a hella lag on this. Oh, there I am. All right. I'm back, guys. Had to stop, collaborate, and listen. Kim's chat feed is slow for me. Yeah, it is. Well, like I use a software that kind of takes some time. We still got 2 battery lives left. Someone said, oh, Queen Elizabeth died. Okay. My personal opinion on this, as an American, and I identify as an American simply because my ancestry goes back to both the white flower on my dad's side and on my mom's side. We've been here since like the 1600s. So like I'm American at that point. Like I've been here for like 400 years. What do you want me to say? I'm 13% Irish. I'm 10% German. I'm like all these ingredients. My American opinion on that is the Queen's dead. Not that, can't care about it that much. Like, yes, it's sad, but she was also hella fucking old. Someone said, Undaunted said, the year in review, top news stories from 2021, month by month. I think you mean 2022. The only thing is like, I mean, we've kind of covered a lot of that. I wish I would have, I didn't want to overly prepare for this. I kind of wanted it to be more casual. Do you know that everyone adds up to 2022? If you add the year of your birth to your current age, it comes to 2022. Don't you think that's weird numbery? Fuckery prevented anyone from standing out. Wait. Hold on. Do you know that everyone adds, if you add the year of birth to your current age, it comes up to 2022? Yeah. That's called math. What? Come on now. That's simple math. For a second, you had me. I was like, what? I hate Armida's obsession with the royal family. That's where I'm at. I'm like, I don't care. Like the American blood in me is like, I don't care about the royal family. I just don't. There's nothing about them I think is interesting. Yeah, that's how age works. Anyway, let's keep going with what's been going on here. We're back to some 130 viewers. But yeah, this Mercury retrograde time, I feel like was honestly the nicest time because there was just this kind of like, enjoyment of what was going on. Mars was in Gemini, so there was a lot of going back and forth. But this was all stuff that we were going to be going over. Now, I will say starting in October was pretty okay. That Venus Sun stuff was good, but I'm really affected by the Sun, so a fallen Sun was interesting. I did not like Mars square Neptune. Mars square Neptune was also, I believe, I think this was the day that article came out, how Pfizer never tested on transmission of the vaccine. I think that's when that came out. Also, by this point, most people were aware. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen this. John Campbell, I don't know if he was a doctor or not. I think it says Dr. John Campbell. He's a really good YouTuber. And at the beginning of the pandemic, he was like, you need to mask up, get vaccinated. But he just posted this video. And I talked about this on my Patreon. I actually had an exclusive video about this. In 1973 or 76, one of those 2 years, it was a Jupiter and Aries, Mars and Gemini transit. They had a swine flu vaccine and it killed one person and then they stopped it. And there's all of this history. And John Campbell goes over this in like his latest video. You guys should check it out. The past few, it was like when there was one adverse event out of 100,000 vaccines, they stopped the vaccine rollout. This vaccine has an adverse event of 1 out of 820. I believe that was the number. So think of the difference. He said it was like there's one adverse event for every 820 inoculations, which on a scale is like for every 1 million, it's like 12,000 or 1,200. I can't remember what the number was. But it's insane. But anyway, like a lot of people got injured from this vaccine, and I have a lot of clients that have actually talked about that. In fact, it's actually really hard to talk about because it's so shitty. But it's just so like it blows my mind that people are still like, the vaccine was the best thing ever. It's like it's actually harmed a lot of people, and those people still can't talk about that. Like, if you want to sit here and say you got the vaccine, nothing happened to you, good for you, but that's not for everybody. You know what I mean? No, so this is what was interesting. Did Pfizer say it would prevent transmission? I think severe illness and death. Which what does that even mean? But this is what I thought was interesting that I don't see many people talking about. Pfizer never actually said that it would stop transmission, but they paid for the marketing for their product in all of these mainstream medias, and they all said, including Biden, that it would stop transmission. So I just don't understand how. I just don't understand that. Like, they never claimed that it did that, but then they paid for all of the marketing and they paid for all the advertisement spots for people to say that. So it's really clever on their end, but that's also the medical industrial complex. They're very clever. Sorry, I got to trim this mustache. I'm starting to get hairs in my mouth. I'm a Canadian, so the monarchy has more interest for us. You know, I talked to somebody who worked for the Canadian, like a branch of the Canadian government, and they made me look at the whole trucker protest differently. And now I'm like, what was the trucker protest all about? Because she was saying something completely different from what I understood. Anyway, let's keep talking. Then we got to this Venus Cazimi, and this is when everything changed. Was around this time. Venus Cazimi, eclipse on Venus. This was actually around when I stopped drinking and smoking. We had a Halloween party at the house, and November 2nd is my day that I quit everything. Mars went retrograde. Jupiter went back into Pisces. This was also when Twitter got bought. This was when the Russia stuff really slowed down. Interest rates, kept going up, but inflation is starting to cool down. What else was going on? Oh, this is the midterm election. I will say that I was still blown away by this midterm election. And a lot of my prediction for why I thought there'd be a red wave was, historically speaking, like, when you have, like, whatever party the incumbent president is, the opposite party goes into power. That's just history. So I was going mainly off of that. And then when I looked at the astrology, it's like, oh yeah, this seems almost like a big red wave because it would be so unstable. That's how I read it. Now, I will say what was interesting was how everyone was kind of, I was on Twitter at that point. I deleted my Twitter again. I just couldn't take it anymore. But a lot of people were like, oh, there's going to be this blue wave and it's going to be great. And I didn't understand people's takeaway from that. I saw a tweet that was like, oh, the Democrats are bad, but we should still vote for them because the Republicans are bad. And it's like, okay, well, there's two ways you can vote. Well, there's three ways you can vote. You can vote black, you can vote red, or you can not vote. And not voting is a vote. We actually had a really fun Halloween party. I was actually that's why I dressed up in my weekly horoscope that week. I was like that Catholic priest, and everyone made pedophile jokes, and I was like, I kind of didn't see that one coming. That one was a little harsh, but that was my costume. It was pretty funny. Any fun and flirty transits coming up? Venus and Pisces. So the end of January. Oh, Valentine's Day this year is going to be great, of 2023. Valentine's Day is going to be good. Any advice for someone starting off the year with an unexpected breakup? I mean, kind of a convenient time if you wanted to like redo yourself. Depends on what your rising sign is. I know the Leo risings have a hot girl summer coming up for them. Trucker protest is about discrimination. Lost job is based on vax status, from my understanding. That's what I thought too, but it was like more complicated after I learned a little bit more from this woman. Russia stuff was crazy because I had a music video get nominated for an award in Russia, and it completely stopped that progress. I beat out a lot of the big names for that nomination. Wait, Russia stuff was crazy because I had a music video get nominated for an award in Russia. I'm kind of curious, like, was that a good thing or a bad thing? I want some more information from the hip. Sometimes you talk about how bad events can become good in retrospect, but that goes both ways. The suppressed information revealed in December made the last few months seem like a total waste. Yeah. I mean, wait, clarify this a little bit more. The suppressed information revealed in December made the last few months seem like a total waste. Are you talking about on a personal level, or like the geopolitics and like the current state of everything. Because no, and I well also too. I mean, I don't think I was saying December was good. I think December was a very harsh month. I think October through November and December were definitely pretty rough. But I also kind of agree. And this is one of those things too. Like human memory is really interesting, and there's good to bad to everything. I just think in the astrology world, we just get so fixated on what's bad that like it's like, you know, that's all that they see. Oh, Nancy Pelosi's. That is right. Good call. I couldn't remember what was going on. That was a really big deal. That was an interesting news event. Also, was it November? There was that gay nightclub shooting that happened here in Colorado Springs. GameStop or AMC MOAS this year. I stopped paying attention to that in 2021. Really, Astro Podcast said Valentine's Day is interesting this year. Yeah, the astrology, the Valentine's Day is really good this year. I actually really like it. But the gay nightclub shooting was a really big deal. And the reason why I think that was a big deal was because let's actually talk about the election real quick. The midterm election, in my opinion, was really wild because it was really smooth. Something I mentioned in that Pluto Pilled podcast I did with Dan and SJ was that, and SJ brought this up in my podcast with him, of that Mars retrograde in Gemini was all of the planning for D-Day. Back in the 1940s, we had a Mars retrograde in Gemini, and that was before the launch of D-Day. And so the Mars retrograde in Gemini is like going over the plans. What are we doing? What are we not doing? And so part of me feels like we don't really know what's going on behind closed doors, what is being prepared for, because clearly March shows a lot's about to transition, and this would indicate a lot of like the things going on behind the scenes going into this huge transition. But I think what was so crazy about this eclipse election thing was like, I kind of thought there would be more violence in the streets, to be honest. I warned people. I was like, you guys need to be safe out there. I could see this getting really violent. And it really wasn't. It was quite smooth, which was just surprising. So that's why, which again, you can't blame me for being wrong. Simply looking at the astrology is like, this looks pretty crazy. Like, in the fact that it was smooth, it was a little bit back and forth. The reason why I'm more open about saying I was wrong, because I was expecting more of a red wave, but I actually was right because the Republicans took the House. For the longest time, I was not sure about the Senate. And at the last minute, I thought the Republicans would take the Senate, and I was wrong about that. But then there was the Colorado nightclub shooting in Colorado Springs, which was really interesting. And the reason why it's interesting is, for one, you have all of the drag queen, kids, getting like groom type stuff, which like, I was just talking to someone about this. Like, I don't understand I don't understand the necessity for drag queens or drag shows to involve kids. Like, if the gay community already deals with this issue of being called pedophiles, what PR, like, why would they want kids to go to drag shows to prove that they're not pedophiles? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And yeah, I think like, whatever. You want to do drag, I have my own opinions about that. If you want to do it, I don't care about it. But I think the children thing is something that's not talked about enough. And I know a lot of people that have certain disagreements with this. My opinion is a lot like these kids should not be sexualized in this way. I think if kids are experiencing gender dysphoria, I feel my heart goes out for them. My heart goes out to anyone experiencing gender dysphoria, because it's a very real thing. I think trans people are a very real thing. I think it's a very small minority and throughout history, but also the way that it's just been, is it the word proliferated? Does proliferated mean expand or contract? The way that it's been expanded shows that something is terribly wrong. And I also just think that, adults can arguably do whatever they want to do in some sense, but I do think that this normalization of kids getting on hormones and having surgeries is really scary, in my opinion. But why for one, the drag show with the kids is insane to me. Like, I don't understand the necessity for that. There's literally no reason. Even if kids are gay or experiencing gender dysphoria, that would be like if I was a dad and I brought my 8-year-old son to the strip club. Like, I'm pretty sure everyone would have a serious issue with that. drag shows can get pretty derogatory. And so, why the Colorado nightclub shooting, and my roommate, she actually had a friend die in that. And so, some people think that like I'm just like this like homophobe or transphobe, and it's so just like I have nuanced opinions about this stuff. Like, someone close to me literally lost someone. Of course, I feel very bad for it. But why I find that one interesting is because that shooter then claimed to be a non-binary person, which then everyone said, oh, that person is just using the non-binary title to get away with it, which from what I understand of the whole non-binary trans stuff is the second you identify that, it has to be respected. And so it's not ideologically consistent. It's not consistent in the line of thinking. And so why I think that's interesting is that really begs in the queer community, like, okay, why is it okay for certain people to identify as trans or non-binary on a whim, but now it's not? And even if, and you could say that, like, again, I don't even really disagree that that person might be just using that as a scapegoat. I probably would believe that, but I just think the idea of like not accepting that as a reality based off the premise that they've already set is not logically consistent. And so it's just one of those things of like I think the queer community has a lot of work to do in terms of what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. And you're starting to see a lot of infighting with that, with the trans stuff too, which I think is just important in terms of all the culture stuff, because, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it went from like, God literally forbid gays get married to where it's like, everyone's pretty cool with gay people. I even said this in one of my podcasts of just like the whole like gay, I don't even like to say agenda. Like the whole gay sphere has just been shoved down like our throats from corporations so much that it's sickening. At this point, it's like, can people just be gay and live their life? Like, why? And I think also gay people that are especially like anti-capitalist need to be way more skeptical about the fact that every corporation is like waving the rainbow flag. Like they're literally using you as pawns to get their corporate agendas passed, which is like how you get used as a minority. And so that's why I thought it was really interesting about the gay nightclub shooting in Colorado Springs. And there's a bunch of like, I heard something about like they were doing a drag queen kids thing and something like that. I don't know if that was true or not. But I think that's simply interesting just because that's one of the first examples that I've seen of like a mass shooting happening and them being like, oh yeah, no, I'm non-binary. And then the gay community, and I'm using gay as just like I'm not saying the fucking alphabets. There's too many. So I part of me still wants to do stand-up comedy. And I want to have a bit of like, there's the LGBTQ and now is the IA plus. Why isn't there an X? Why, like, that would just sound cooler for one, but like, why isn't there an X involved? Anyway, but just the gay community for short, like, why isn't there a consistent logical basis for it? And I think that if you can't have that consistent logically, it's going to be hard to get like gay rights like respected in any way. And so I think that you'll see more and more of these events happen. Like, I don't know if you guys heard about like the trans woman who like went to this woman's spa in LA, even though the guy, I'm going to say guy, cause he was like, I look like a dude. I dress like a dude. I only fuck women. And I don't tell them that I don't tell them that I identify as a woman, but on his license, he's a woman. And he like did that because he went to prison before for like some domestic assault or violence thing and was like trying to get out of going to like prison for that. And it's just like, these are like really tough questions that need to be answered. And it just feels like so much of the gay community just kind of ignores those kind of things. And I think what that does is that takes away from the good parts of what the gay community is trying to get across. Let me scroll through some of these. People were dying in the streets over protesting Brazil elections during that eclipse. That's right. I forgot about those Brazilian elections. And I've heard a lot of back and forth things about that. I don't know enough about Brazilian politics to really have a full stance. Homeboy, hold on. Well, the nomination was an amazing thing. There's an extension of film in Moscow. And when Putin invaded, the award show was put on pause. The people that put it on spoke out against the war and Putin. Oh, okay. I could see how that gets really complicated. Well, congratulations for winning an award, or at least being nominated, or I forgot what you said. Politics is a distraction. The real story has to do with radioactive RA element 88 being put into everything to make us walking, talking networks for the virtual reality we live in. Based. That sounds based. I need to look that up. Oh, the Twitter files. Yeah. The Twitter files to me is like, oh, shocker. What? The thing that everyone knew was happening, but now it's just Matt Taibbi is a racist, which is like ridiculous. The FTX collapse started in November. That's right. That was a big deal. That was a really big deal, in my opinion. It blows my mind. I was just watching an interview of Sam Bankman-Fried, and his lawyers probably got to be like, you fucking retard. Why did you go on every single platform you could possibly find to speak? Like, you're so dumb. He's going to jail. There's no way around it. Yeah, the main dates for Astra was weird this year. Yeah, maybe it was secretive backroom dirty dealing. Maybe it's behind the scenes. November 8th was just very Saturnian. Drag queens are in libraries reading books to children. Yeah, I don't, why? What are they, why? I don't get why. Anyway, I'm gay and I don't agree. It's extent wokeism, but extreme anti-wokeism is now getting us bad. I agree. Like, I'm kind of at that point too, where it's like, dude, I think a lot of the woke shit is absolutely insane, but and this is where my Libra moon kicks in. And I spoke about this, I think sometime last year, but it's like the reason why the woke stuff is bad is because you're going to have an equal and opposite reaction, and that's going to be even worse. So you have to have some type of sensibility, but that doesn't happen with Saturn and Aquarius. Oh yeah, I heard about the Idaho guy getting caught, and I don't know what that was about. Oh, the Liver King thing. If any of you guys care about that, I was looking into the Liver King thing. So if you don't know about this, Liver King on roids, wow, shocker. But how he got caught with his steroid cycle was he sent an email out to Derek at More Plates, More Dates, and that email that he sent was during Mercury retrograde in Gemini in 2021. And then Mars retrogrades in Gemini in 2022, and all of this information comes out about it, which I was like, whoa, that's crazy. That was a really big thing for at least shit I care about. I feel like it's kind of self-defeating to try to normalize counterculture. The whole fun and point of it is that it's not for kids. Exactly. Thank you. Christmas parade mass killing in Waukesha by a guy driving his vehicle through a parade. That wasn't this year, right? Wasn't that last year? Yeah, I remember that. No one cared about that one. That one was like really wild. Oh my God. Yeah, the gay nuclear physicist. Wait, I'm thinking about the guy in the Biden administration that like stole like someone's luggage, and this guy was in charge of like the nuclear shit. It's just like the Biden administration is literally a joke. Gay, don't agree with the kids aiding, yeah, and aiding kids to transition as kids. Yeah, I think it's just it's mutilation. Kids can't consent to that. And I think the idea that if kids can consent to what their sexuality is, that's the same argument that pedophiles use, that kids can consent to having sex. So there's a lot of issues with that. Once lines are erased, they need to be redrawn the line. Yeah. The Latinx took the X. Yeah. I'm gay, and I felt like the shooting at Colorado Springs brought gay rights back a few years. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I don't know. I think that type of situation is sad all the way around, in my opinion. Also, mass shootings is used the brave to pass laws against the people's protected rights. Yeah, that's something that I have a problem with, when a lot of like the woke liberal people are like, they're trying to take away our rights, but it's also like they're like, the liberals are also trying to take away people's rights too. So you can't really say that. There's no gay community. It's just a hive mind of RuPaul quotes. Glad to never been part of that cult. Yeah, it's and I know this is why I say like there's no astrology community. I really agree. Like I think, and this is why I said in my last weekly that's going to be posted tomorrow morning. I think the word community is just weaponized and just used way too much. It doesn't really mean anything. But I'm using gay people in that group as a short. I already talked about Andrew Tate, Gigi, transgender genders divide and conquer for chaos. I agree. Derek at More Plates, More Dates would have scolded him. Scolded who? Oh, yeah, Liver King? Oh, I know. I just think it was mind-blowing that people are like, what? He was on steroids? It's like, Yeah, no one thought that was surprising in that scene. Sam Britton, don't know who you're talking about. The luggage stealer. Oh, is that who that was? Yeah. Gender and identity, sexual identity, different. They're yes, but but they're being used in the same way. Like, for example, no matter what, you're a male and a female. Like, there's no changing that. Now, you don't have to subscribe to the gender norms. It's 2023. Do and be whoever the fuck you want. But then when you say, well, like, I'm transgender, but that's changing my sexuality, it's just like, it's mental gymnastics that, like, for example, like, if you want to be trans, I completely support your right to be trans. And like, something for me is like, I super believe in like, trans people at least deserve respect. At least deserve respect in a civilized society. Like, I have no problem saying stuff like that. But then when it's like, now, but I have to speak differently. And also something I get really pissed off about. And like, I think if people are allowed to be pissed off about being misgendered, do not call me cisgender. I'm a man. I am not a subset of what a man is. I am not cisgender. I am just a man. And I think this idea of cisgender is absolutely ridiculous. You're either the sex that you were either the sex that you were born into, not assigned at birth. But if you want to transition, you have to understand. And there are sane trans people out there that are like, yeah, I understand that, like, I'm transitioning to something different, but like, I cannot stand the term cisgender. I was thinking about this. I feel like when someone calls me cisgender is what a trans person must feel like when they are called a trans person, and rather than just woman or man. It's like, I feel the same way. Austin talked about Liver King on Gordon's podcast. That's funny. I didn't know that. Male mutilation is circumcision. Don't even get me started on circumcision. Yeah, male genital mutilation is totally common. Conspiracy theories have all come true. Woo, are you correct? I really appreciate evolutionary biologists' perspectives on the gender sex thing. Brett Weinstein and Heather Hang, dude, I'm one of their. It's like the only patron I'm for. I fucking love Brett and Heather. Yeah, all people deserve respect, and I think that's what's so hard about the trans stuff is like, totally trans people deserve respect. Like, something I've really found in the astrology community is there's so many gay people, so many queer people, and I never had experience with any of that. And it's really given me a lot more understanding of what they've gone through and who they are. And I have a lot of respect for gay people and queer people of all shapes and sizes, but it's so of like, when you get to the extremes of what those ideologies, push out, and how a lot of them are also like, you can't question any of it, is where it gets like really choppy and really controversial. But yeah, all people deserve respect. But no men in women's areas. That's exactly. Well, and again, a lot of the, and you never see this issue with trans men, by the way. It's only trans women. Like, a lot of trans women's rights stuff is like men's rights, like just hidden and uncovered. It's like, why is a man allowed to compete in the, like the Leah Thomas thing was insane to me. I think that was also a Mars, Jupiter, and Aries conjunction. Like, the Leah Thomas thing was absolutely insane to me. Even though, and the same thing with like, because it's just like, when you say cis woman, it's like, okay, well, now women are a subset of women, and now trans women now have all these more rights than actual women. So it just feels like women's rights are going in reverse a little bit. Anyway, Queen died. What was the other thing that was going on? Even acknowledging terms like Latinx or cis plays into these goober games. I pretend I'm an ignorant boomer and give them a weird look. Yeah, exactly. The trans women stuff really just benefits men at the end of the day, which is, because again, this is why I'm saying, like, you never hear this stuff with trans men. You never hear this stuff with trans men. They're never really doing anything all that crazy. At least I haven't heard of anything. It's mostly trans women who are mostly guys. And again, I say this in all respect to like trans people. Like, honestly, I know plenty of trans people, very cool people. They're all human beings. Like, I don't know what more to say. Will Venus transit in the future bring back women's rights? This is actually a good question. That's going to be a Venus retrograde and Aries thing. Like, that 2025, 2026 thing is going to come up. And so for me, like, I think Roe v. Wade getting overturned was like, yeah, that was expected. But those same, like, I really believe in the Roe v. Wade policy. Like, that should have been protected by Democrats. But what I think is scary is when you have people like Clarence Thomas being like, let's take away everyone's sexual reproductive rights, and let's take away birth control. And don't get me wrong, I have plenty of issues with hormonal birth control. I've talked about those. But those should not be taken away. Like this is where the conservative justice is like, okay, this is just gross now and you're going way too far. But that's all stuff that's going to come up in 2025, 2026. This is why I was saying when that stuff happened, you are going to see that come up in big echoes in 2025, 2026, whether that's California segregating, Texas segregating, some kind of state segregation, in my opinion. Man, there was something else just going on in the news too that was happening that I could not think. Oh, I don't know if you guys watch CoffeeZilla, but the Logan Paul scandal, that's been more recent. But that all happened during a Mercury retrograde in Gemini, and now that Mars is going through, I've noticed how many stories that started in May and June of 2021 when Mercury retrograde in Gemini are now being like brought up in a bad way with Mars retrograde in Gemini. God, what else was going on? This is, I think, the hardest part about doing this year in review is. Sorry, I keep looking at my battery life. I'm on 1%. I'm on 1%, so we might have to be wrapping this up somewhat soon. But I think the hardest part about doing this year in review is like there was a lot of shit that happened this year. Like this was not a like 2020 was a crazy year. Arguably 2021 was not all that crazy. Like really, I mean, like you had the Biden administration come in, you had the vaccine rollout, you had Afghanistan fall, you had Bitcoin hit 60, you had I mean, I feel like that was kind of it for the most part. What do you think of states making moves to protect abortion rights themselves? Will it work like gay marriage where they eventually becomes a federal? Because yeah, well, and that's, I mean, that's kind of the thing. Like it's always kind of been like a states' rights issue in a lot of cases because that's also how the United States is set up. I think it will eventually, but also the problem is how the federal government infrastructure is going to work by the time that can happen is not going to be the same. So, like for example, again, I just believe that there's going to be some type of state segregation or state what is it called when there's going to be states that no longer want to be a part of the United States of America, and I think that's where it's going to change. And I think that question is like yes, but it's also really complicated. So my camera battery is probably going to die in a second. That means it will switch to my FaceTime camera. So all I'm saying is my camera quality is going to go down. Yeah, it's still 2022 here too. It's 10:30. Secession. Thank you. Secede. I could not think of that word. I'm so dumb sometimes. SCOTUS is supposed to step in when states discriminate against people. I live in Arizona during the Civil War era. I live in Arizona during the Civil War era? Undaunted. Are you 160 years old? Oh, and that was the other thing, ChatGPT. We talked about that. SJ brought that up. I think that's a bigger deal for Pluto and Aquarius. That was something that came up during this time, but I think that's just a precursor to Pluto and Aquarius, and that is a really, really big deal, and it's kind of almost scary in a big way. But that happened just like 2 weeks ago, somewhere around this time. That was right when Jupiter about stationed direct too. Exactly. Verse 2021 was like this one theme and just felt heavier. Yeah, 2022 is so much. Like there's been a lot going on this year. That's why I was like, let's do a live stream and talk about everything. Dude, yes, I just watched the Alex Hormozy video. If you guys don't know who Alex Hormozy is, like I watch all of his stuff for like my business stuff. Like I really love Alex Hormozy, but I just watched his video and that's where I was like, holy shit, this actually does have really big implications. And I knew AI was going to get there, but like also we're talking about the age of Aquarius shit going on. And I saw BZB, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. You know, what's interesting about the Chat GPT chart is it's this Venus Mars opposition and Mercury fallen or in detriment. I wonder if that doesn't end up, you know, maybe it gets reversed and taken off for a little while later on down the road. It gets, you know, brought back in. But now that AI is here, guys, like, I mean, I think it's arguable to say we're in the age of Aquarius, where we work like think of the age of the bull, we worship the bull. The age of the ram, we worship the ram. Age of Pisces, we worship Jesus. Age of Aquarius, we worship technology, we worship experts, we worship the authority. We worship AI. We're going into that era. That doesn't happen for another like 100 or so years, I think, where the actual age shifts. But these are all the COVID and the Pluto and Aquarius is all the precursor to the actual age of Aquarius. And I think that's what people don't understand. Like so many people are like, oh my God, the age of Aquarius is gonna be about love and light. And it's like, no, it's not. Literally, no, it's not. It's gonna be about worshiping robots and what's a human? What's a robot? The eventual robot slave human war that we'll have going on, and how we'll all like that's where we're going. There's no other way around it. For women, the right to murder their baby is a thing. Just saying that Venus question about human rights is very odd. Well, you know, women like crabs, moms eat their babies. And that, well, that's the thing. Like for me, I'm like, I think like this is why I like the Roe v. Wade stance. It's like reasonable. Like, yeah, I think more people need to understand. Like, I totally like, I don't consider myself pro-life, but I definitely am like, no, you're definitely killing a life. But like, also, I think there's a little bit of playroom in terms of that. Like, this is why I say, like, I really agree with the Roe v. Wade stance. It's very reasonable for the most part. Yeah, AI is scary. Venus may be playing a huge role in my life this year. I wonder if the chick that I told I had a crush on comes to her senses and shoots her shot back to me so I can play hard to get. Ooh, city boy, city boy. I'm not reincarnating during Robot Wars. That's not up to you. Well, maybe it is up to you. I think it's about rights for all, but keep making rights different for men and women as women have the capacity to give birth when men can't. Yeah, it's like, I believe I like the ideal of equal rights, but also when you get into specifics, it gets complicated. Just everything has so much nuance to it, in my opinion. We are on the precipice of the age of Aquarius. Yeah, the age of Aquarius actually doesn't start for another, I think, like 100 or so years, maybe 200 years. But this is all leading up to what that will be, which is a 2,300 year cycle or 2,600 year cycle. But that's this year. I think the biggest thing going on is that I don't know if no one said anything about the Logan Paul CoffeeZilla stuff. Like that was a really big thing. Mercury just stationed retrograde. I feel like I haven't seen much. The reverse repo market is starting to go a little bit down. The opposite of abortion isn't life. It's forced birth. That's like one of those sayings, like, well, it's, for example, with like Black Lives Matter. When you tell people Black Lives Matter, if they say anything they're like, oh, well, do you think Black lives don't matter? And it's not really like that. Like, the opposite of abortion isn't life. It's forced birth. Like, again, there's things I agree about that, but there's also things where I feel like that's just like a not like it's much more nuanced than that. The option has to exist. Yeah, that's what I agree with. Like, I do believe the option has to exist, especially too, like when the Republicans are like, we need to take it away for like rape and incest. It's like, really? We can't do that? Like, and then you have like the kids who are like products of rape and incest. They're like, I'm alive and I feel good. And it's like, well, I can't really deny that. Like, that's a good story, but also like, I don't know. I feel like there should be some kind of power there in my opinion. When I hear Logan Paul, I tap out. Right? The Roe v. Wade just had similar energy to BLM. Yeah, exactly. Because it's like you're either pro-life or you're pro-abortion, and there's no difference in between it. It's like, for example, I just heard about this story about this white guy that was killed the same way George Floyd was. Like, knee on his neck for like 13 minutes. He died. The whole time the cops were laughing. It's all on videos. His name was Timothy something. No outrage, right? And this idea, it's like, oh, you don't stand with Black Lives Matter, even though, by the way, like I still see, this is why I had to get off Twitter. Half of the white people on Twitter that were astrologers had BLM in their bio. And it's like, how disrespectful. Like, Black Lives Matter literally stole millions of dollars from people thinking that they were donating to something actually real, and then used those funds to buy mansions and didn't do anything to actually support the cause that they claimed that they were a part of. Like, it was a scam. And it's like, that is actually making the problem worse of like, yeah, like, I think it's arguable to say that, like, especially in the police system, Black people are treated differently. Now, also I don't have to bring up the statistics of the population versus the crime rate, but like these, like it's just like, oh, it's just Black Lives Matter and that's it, and you can't think anything else, otherwise you're a Blue Lives Matter person, which is like, it's just this political divide that serves nothing and it goes nowhere, and it amazes me that people are still stuck there. Timothy, shout out. I'm in a 5th house perfection year with the natal moon and South Node in Capricorn. Is this why I'm emotional? Well, is the moon there? The 5th house perfection year with the natal moon and South Node in Capricorn. I would need more context for that. You cannot legislate morality or religion. Free will is what rights are about. This is living in free. So people have to live their own decisions. Again, and this is what's so hard about this conversation, especially with like abortion. Like, I think abortion is like a really like hard topic to talk about because there's so many things that are so agreeable. And maybe this is like my Libra moon. I'm not a big guy. It's like, this is the line in the sand we can't cross. Like, I was like that more so for like lockdowns because that like devastated everything. But also, I'm kind of on more of the page of like, I think the sexual revolution and like third wave feminism arguably made situations better for men than like women. And like, you're having a lot of women feeling like they're being like their bodies are being used, and like, you know, like they're just sex, like proliferating sex is like, you know, now like not a good thing for them, and that's arguably true. You know, again, I'm definitely not saying you shouldn't have sex or anything like that, or not live your life, but also there's a big subset of women that don't agree with those things anymore. Or you have the kids born into a fuck situation and they suffer. Young folks these days don't want to have these kids because they don't want to grow up ever. Well, BLM didn't do that. A woman that started BLM did that. Yes, but also like, what did BLM do besides make a bunch of noise? Like, what was good there? Again, like, I think the George Floyd thing was like something that was wrapped up really quickly. But she was also like the actual like woman that owned it, from what I understand. And so like, I just don't know what positive they actually did. That whole movement actually did, besides make a lot of noise and get people more angry about the people making noise. The symbol for pro-life should be a coat hanger. In LA, there are stores that have BLM signs of it's arguably a don't bully me sign. Exactly. Well, that was my biggest issue with it too, because then when you threaten people with violence, which what's a lot of those like protests did become violent, people are just going to hold that up to virtue signal and say, please don't attack me. It's like, it reminds me of what the Jewish people did in the story of, this is a Bible story, the Prince of Egypt. I'm just thinking of the Disney movie where they painted their doors with the lamb of with the blood of the lamb so that God didn't smite them. Like, that's what the BLM sign looks like to me. It's just like, half of these people don't even fucking care. Half of them are probably fucking racist, but they just don't want their fucking shit robbed. I think it's sad when people are talking about love and light don't consider an unborn baby child. Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's one of those things where like, this is why I'm like, yeah, I think baby, like, again, I think what abortion is like, you're definitely taking a life. Like, that's true. Like, again, but whether or not this context, the situations, and again, I also think like the idea of just women like, oh, I'm just gonna get pregnant all the time and not do anything else and get like 3 or 4 abortions, which I know is the mischaracterization of that. Not everyone's like that, but it's just like, it would incentivize women to make better choices about their body and who they sleep with, and, you know, whether or not they're willing to have a kid. And also, a lot of women are starting to wake up to the fact that they want kids, even though it's like this thing of like, oh, women just want to make money and be girl bosses. She started it. BLM was supposed to be a movement that brought awareness to the fact that police have been killing black people for nearly 50 years. Police have been killing everybody for a long time. And now, like, the police system started because of slavery and all that stuff, and I'm very familiar with that. But it failed in that mission of starting to bring awareness to that, and it failed big time. And there's no people thinking about that and thinking of like, how could you do that better? I heard that if you type BLM, it takes you to Biden's page. I don't know. If I see a BLM hashtag, Ukraine flag, a pride flag, or a trans flag in bio, I'm scrolling past valid issues, but the virtue signaling is exhausting. Nuance and discussion. Yeah, no, I can't do the Ukrainian flag thing because I'm like, unless you're like I've seen like people from Ukraine like have a Ukrainian flag, like, you're allowed to do that. But the white people that are like, Ukraine is the most important. No, there's no Nazis there. The Nazis are the truckers in Canada. Police do kill way more unarmed black men than any other demographic, though. That's actually not true. They actually kill more unarmed white people. White people suffer more police violence than black people, surprisingly. That's not to say that black people don't suffer. I think everyone suffers from the violence of cops because cops suck. But no. Oh, hold on. Let's do this. All right, you're getting the shitty camera now. You're getting the Zoom camera. My camera just finally died. Anyway. Add a script. I know you're probably I know that might upset you, but that's like a real thing. That's not me just being like, oh no, white people. Like, no, they do. Like more white people are killed. Now, from the hit per capita, black people suffer more. I don't know the numbers about that. I'm sure there's probably some reality to that, but I think this game of do black people or white people suffer more is dumb because, again, cops just use their power to take over like people, like, and to kill people and not get any justification or justice for that. So I think and this is why, again, I really appreciated Kanye's comments about being like, no, white lives matter or all lives matter. Because it's like, yeah, like it should be this process of changing the police system, because if you want black people to stop being killed by cops, like, it's not about being like, oh, we need to protect black people. It's like, well, we need to change the policing institution, which is so sacred and so protected in so many different ways that if you actually get the people together in an all lives matter kind of thing, which, again, I didn't really even agree with the all lives matter like statement, because, again, I understand that it takes away from what the problem thing is. Yeah, and this is something I said in the beginning. Not all cops suck. Most cops go in there with good intentions, but you can't beat that system. You can't. It's too powerful. And it's the real camera, usually a Patreon exclusive. Yeah, right. This is the real camera that's going on here. Being that police reporters are never double checked means that we actually don't have proof of the proportion killed police by police is difficult to know. It's a good point. Black people make up so much of the population, so when you adjust the numbers to fit how represented white people are, yeah, but also you can say the same thing that black people are like, what is it, like the smallest amount of people in the population, but they also commit the most crimes. So this is one of those things of like, well, they might suffer more, but also they commit more crimes. And this is where, again, when you start getting into the race part of it, it almost takes away from what the problem is, and it is that's the police in and of itself. And I'm a big I'm a believer in, we got to have some kind of police. Like, people love to just have a wet dream about anarchism. And anarchism, I think, is like a San Francisco way of saying that you're a libertarian. But it's not like it all comes back down to the police, and that they're corrupt, and that they've abused their power, and that there's no justice that people actually get at the hands of the justice system. Anyway, make a poll to see if we want you in a suit or your style. No, I'm going to be doing the suit. Anyway, I love that we're tackling these big conversations. I don't think we're going to solve any of them today. But and it's, again, too, it's hard to talk about astrology without these conversations coming up, because these are all things that are going to be really present in the astrology and in this country for the next 3 or 4 years. Well, I mean, you can argue the next 2 decades, but really these next 3 or 4 years. The fact that there's a general idea of black people being stronger and more starved of opportunities means a police reaction to interactions. Yeah, well, this is where I think, like, when people say like the police are racist, I'm like, I think there's just been so much programming of like what black people are that, like, yeah, I think racist biases totally exist within an individual cop. But this is also why we need to be having a better police force that don't have those racist biases. But also, too, this also comes back down to, like, again, it's an unignorable fact that, like, a lot of, like, most crime is committed, especially violent crime, is committed by black people. Now, we can argue all day long if that's like because the government and, created the poverty and, keep them in that system. I believe in all of those things. But at the end of the day, like, again, it all comes back down to the police. But, again, like, some of this stuff, like, some people might watch this recap and, like, may not like what I have to say, but, like, and it's hard to avoid these kind of issues, because, like, personally, I would love to not have to talk about some of this stuff simply so I can just, like, make people happy. But also, the astrology of these next few years are going to be bringing up more of these topics. Like, this isn't going away anytime soon. And it's not just like, oh, 2023, we're going to move on to new things. we have the next 3 or 4 years to have these issues grow even deeper until they probably separate this country at some point. And I think it's going to be very difficult to understand how to navigate that unless you have a nuanced take on it. Um, the sentiment towards cops is the result of a generation raised on grapes. Dude, you're talking to someone I primarily listen to underground rap. And not like okay, I listen to maybe a little bit Biggie, but like I'm talking like real fucking gangster shit. Um like again, show like there's a lot of good individual cops. I have family members that are cops. I have clients that are cops, but it's the police system. It's the institution of itself that denies the justice for people because they can protect themselves, because they can, again, this is why the Uvalde cops didn't get any punishment. Or I don't think they got any punishment. I don't actually know the details, but this is why they're not going to have to they're not going to have to, suffer any repercussions for the lack of doing their job. And I agree from the hip. It's like, dude, it's not from rap music. Like rap music is a product of what what black people's experiences are. Now, I think there's an argument that if black people wanted to like get their culture a lot better, they could like maybe be a little bit more particular about what, influences them. But don't see how you can acknowledge the roots of policing and slavery and slave recapture, but then not realize how these crime stats are skewed against an over-policed minority. Don't see how, hold on, let me read that again. Don't see how you can acknowledge the roots of policing and slavery and a slave recapture, but then not realize how these crime stats are skewed against an over-policed minority. But then not realize how these crime should not be in quotes. Stats are skewed against an over-policed minority. Yes, but no at the same time. I can't really agree or disagree on that, because again, you're talking to a Libra moon. I'm going to be able to see both sides of it. But again, because I mean, you could also talk about like, for example, like, when you literally like I don't know if you guys listen to Thomas Sowell, but like black families used to be stronger than white families in like the 40s, and then it wasn't until the welfare state came along that broke up the black families, that put children in this poverty, that put children on government programs, and then you get like the fucking CIA and the FBI putting crack in these fucking families and shit like that, then putting these ghettos and all of this other shit. Like, yeah, I think there's a huge historical thing where they're like stuck in a certain situation, but there's also a big lot of it that like black people aren't victims, like in a lot of ways. Like there's plenty of black people that have gotten out of that system, that have gotten out of it, and a lot of it is this like vicious cycle coming from both ends. And I don't think things were nearly as bad as they used to be, especially with like within the black community. But I think just this idea that it's just, well, the fact that white people went and bombed black families as well. I don't know if this is talking about the Tulsa thing. I think from what I used to hear about that, and then I also heard something about that wasn't even a real thing. So again, well, again, yeah, because again, too, there's black conservative perspectives. Like Thomas Sowell is probably like the best person to listen to on this. Bombing of Black Harlem. Okay, I will look more into it, because I thought you were talking about the like the Black Wall Street thing. Like I read more about that was like not even like a real thing. But again, if I said that, people are gonna be like, it was a real thing, and you're racist, and it's like, well, there's two sides to every story, right? Memphis riots. I don't know anything about the Memphis riots. So are the riots in Mississippi. Oh, the riots in Mississippi, if you're talking about the 60s, stealing land from the blacks during post Reconstruction. Yeah, but Reconstruction was also like, if you get into the history of Reconstruction, it was a very fucked up time in America. Like no one really knew what to do. And again, like this is why you have like the whole like statues in the South, and like people want to take those down because they think they symbolize it. But a lot of the, like Confederate people statues in the South were their way of like, that was like, it was their way of remembering that like that was a fucking thing that happened. It wasn't like an idolization. So again, I don't necessarily disagree that like, yeah, black people are definitely targeted. Like racism is a fucking very real thing. But I also like, there's like black people aren't a monolith. Like that's what people need to understand. Like we talk as if like, just like we talked about the gay stuff earlier, people are like, well, I'm gay and I don't believe in this, and I'm gay and I don't believe in that. It's like same thing with black people. Like they're not a monolith. They don't all agree on the same thing. and there's not the same, understanding of certain historical events. And I think that nuance needs to be put at play. Anyway, yeah, Thomas Sowell's great. I actually have one of his books I've been digging into. It's it's one of his books. He's got like 10 billion fucking books. Anyway, I 100% don't agree with a lot of black people on a lot of things, but there are objective truths. Yeah. Well, it also depends. Like, you could also sit here and say the 1619 Project is an objective truth, and that's also arguably false. History is much more complicated, and I think it's important to bring in both of those perspectives. But again, when it comes to just fixing like the black quote unquote issue, however you want to frame that, I think it's much more multifaceted than people think. I think, yeah, a big part of it is like, yeah, people are racist, but I think another part of it is like it's just been a downward spiral on all sides. I think a big part of it could come from like reparations won't fix anything. Giving money out won't fix anything. Like, I kind of take a Thomas Sowell approach to this. Like, he's got a lot of good thoughts about it, but a lot of what you say about like Thomas Sowell and fixing like black Americans is, you could say that about white Americans. Like, something I've learned more about is like Ebonics, which apparently Ebonics is racist to say, which makes no sense to me. Or I should say African American Vernacular English isn't even African American. It comes from white people, and specifically it comes from people in Western Wales and British. And slaves that came over took on that lingo from their slave owners. But if I say anything related to Ebonics in some type of way, it's like I'm cultural appropriation, but they don't talk about how that actually came from white people, and then you get into this complicated mess. So it's just one of those. Again, I'm just saying it's one of those things for like all of this fucking shit. But like, I think that this is much more like all of these issues take a lot more understanding of the full story. And I think a lot of the solutions are very simple. Like, society at large needs to have a reckoning. And what I mean by that is, this is where Pluto and Aquarius comes along. We need to get more in touch with our roots. We need to get more in touch with our ancestral like way of living. We have not, like, humans have been living arguably the same way for millions of years. And then over the past, you could say 2,000 years, you could say 3,000, but you can mostly just say the past 500 years, we have lived very, very, very differently. And we've lived very differently over the past 100 years, and even more differently over the past 50 years. And I think we need to have a coming back to what it means to be a human and getting back in touch with society, with families. Like, I think, again, restoring black families would be a big way to alleviate poverty, the crime rate, the drug use, the imprisonment, and all of that stuff. Same way we need to reform the police system. We need to reform the justice system, all of that stuff. The fact that people think black people's contribution to culture is limited to rap is still hilarious and perfect example of how successful race propaganda has been. Yeah, I agree. Most black people come up with like most cultural things. Like, I mean, all metal, like, I'm a big metal fan, and like that all comes from blues, which all comes from black people. Like, there's no metal without any of that, but people don't talk about that. We insist on open debates among policymakers. Nancy Pelosi never having had to debate a challenger. Ebonics is the word ebony added to phonics to make it sound like black people can't speak proper English. Oh, wait, I didn't know that. Ebonics is the word ebony added to phonics to make it sound like black people can't speak proper English. What's ebony? Yeah, blues and gospel. Sometimes people appropriate cultures because we think they're cool. Why can't we? Again, like, there's all types of cultural appropriation. I think that's cool. Like, that's what America's about. Like, is like literally appropriating other people's culture. But also, I think gatekeeping culture is just retarded. Ebonics is the word black added to the phonics to make it sound like black people can't speak. Yeah, sorry from the hip. I just feel like you're referencing someone specific here. Well, and again, and I think that's really and this is where my astrology comes back more into play, is like all of this stuff really comes back down to the same issue. And it's just like, we have come so far as a culture, and we've come so far as human beings, that we don't even recognize what we used to be. Like, human evolution takes millions of years, and here we are, and we've evolved in ways that is so beyond anything that we can comprehend in just the past 100 years, that we're all going crazy. I mean, we're also having garbage food, garbage water, garbage breathing, garbage being put into our bodies. And so I think when you add up all of this, you get this broken society. And I think this is true for all Western cultures, but it's eventually going to find its way to the East. I mean, you're already seeing that in places like China and stuff like that. I know ebony is a black color, but like just the way you phrase it was like Ebonics is the word ebony added to phonics to make it sound like black people can't speak proper English. That's where I was just like, it sounds like you're referencing someone specific. And again, they all just want us to fight against ourselves. And this is my biggest issue with the BLM movement. It was like us versus them. Same thing with, are you vaccinated or unvaccinated? Us versus them. Are you Republican or Democrat? Us versus them. It's this tribalism stuff that just keeps us divided, and it just keeps us distracted. It's like divide and conquer is like War 101. And so, and let me bring this back to the astrology of this, because this is so important when it comes to Pluto and Aquarius. You are going to see more of this division occur. You're going to see more of this ripping apart of society occur more. And I think the other side of that, I think it's very possible that we can have some type of say in how far that goes. I think on a bigger astrological scale, when you're talking about the shifting of the epochs, if you're talking about the shifting of the ages, and you go into the age of Aquarius, I don't think that no matter what, we have to have technology, no matter what, we are where we are, but there is a part of us that still has to remain human, and getting more in touch with that is so important. In the 90s, they created Ebonics to frame the vernacular of blacks to make it seem like black people were speaking a totally different language. It was really just cool colloquialisms. Okay. Sorry, the way you framed it, I just got confused, I guess. Yeah, that makes sense. So is it racist to say Ebonics? Because saying African-American vernacular English is just kind of a mouthful. The 99% is so much more in common with one another that they exactly. Anyway, honestly, too, guys, something that, and I mentioned this earlier, now that I'm on a 3-hour, live stream, it is so cool being able to have a community like this. You have a big axe. Oh yeah, that's my small axe. I've got another bigger axe. I really appreciate being able to have a community to have these kind of conversations where, like, in the comments, everyone had a different opinion on most things. Like, I mean, I would probably argue most of you are probably like based red pilled, but then it's like, I talk about this and some of you might disagree, or talk about that, some of you might disagree. It's really cool. Like, I don't see this really anywhere in society right now. And like, I'm so grateful that I've cultivated a following that we can like go on a live stream and just kind of chit chat about this stuff and not be hostile. It is really cool to be honest with you. So I really hope that, you can kind of take this energy and take it other places in your life in terms of, just talking to other people, or, being more nuanced about these situations. Cause, for me, like, when I have clients that say stuff to me and I'm like, I totally disagree with that, but my job today isn't to disagree with you. My job today is to serve you in some type of way. And that's all I can do is just be a servant. You know what I mean? That's why I'm doing this. Yeah, and honestly, I'm surprised I went this long for 3 hours. I can't believe how many of you stayed here for 3 hours. It's so sick. It really is super cool. So, I will also say, should I bring up anything before we wrap up? I don't know what else to say. I feel like we had a lot of talk. If you guys, I doubt if people are watching the recording of this, I doubt that many people made it here, but I will just say that, like, it is hard to navigate. Like, sometimes I don't want to talk about the cultural stuff, and sometimes I don't want to talk about the political stuff, but it's also difficult not to when it's like, one, the astrology is like what is showing that, and there's more themes of that coming up, and two, this is a thing that's like affecting people's personal lives. Like, the whole, like, for me personally, like, it was really shitty not being vaccinated and then not even being able to feel like I can talk to people about it without feeling like I would be, chastised and like attacked and, judged, and not allowed to eat at a restaurant, not allowed to travel, not allowed to do all the stuff. And so it's just kind of like, part of me wants to do that, just keep it on the astrology cam, like, stop talking about this stuff. But the other part is like, this is something that's just all encompassing right now. You can be like, like, for example, my mom's a good example. She doesn't do any social media. She doesn't pay attention to any of this cultural stuff, but this is all stuff that she like knows about, and that is like affecting her life and affecting her friends and all this other stuff. So, it is just really crazy, but Anyway, thank you for hitting up the Patreon. Yeah, we do have another great American eclipse that is going to be happening. More division. Again, the United States as it is right now is not what it's going to be in about 5-6 years, specifically 2036. Oh, dude, electric universe theory. I'm going to post the 2 videos I know about it. This is like when people show me their conspiracy theories, I always one up them with electric universe and purple dawn theory. The more I understand electric universe and purple dawn, the more I'm like, that shit's fucking real. Like dude, it's so fucking crazy. If you don't know about electric universe theory and purple dawn, you should look that shit up. And I'll eventually post some videos about it, maybe on like my Patreon, so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Politics have pervaded its nasty scent in every facet of our lives, and it's deliberate to my estimation. Yeah, I believe that. Not keeping it just astrology means that you aren't being you, and you managed to integrate these convos without sounding preachy. Thank you. And that's one of my biggest fears. Is like, I'm not trying to tell, like, I don't want to sound preachy. I mean, like, my job is kind of to preach, but like, it's just like one of those things of like, you know, I can tell you what I think and what I personally believe, but then also it's like I understand that there's more to that conversation. Like when I tell people like I agree with Roe v. Wade, some people are like, well, so you agree with killing babies? And it's like, well, and it's not like a blanket statement like that, but yeah, there's room for nuance there. And so, and I'm not here to like try to prove myself or prove people wrong. Like that's not what I'm here for. But it's just kind of like, you know, these are all like we're all just human beings, and like something I have a love and hate relationship with the pandemic is like we are all in this together. Like they're like I hated hearing that at the grocery store, but it's true. Like we are all in this together, whether we think so or not. So sorry I missed the astrology part of this conversation. Well, yeah, sorry that I couldn't keep it astrology all the time. I created my vaccine records in Photoshop and went about my life. Nice. I couldn't see. I'm a Leo sun. I have to be like integral. Like I just didn't like doing that. And I don't like the idea of showing a passport, like a health passport. I'm like, that's Nazi shit. The other day I joked with my friend, every time I discover an astrology, I like this video of him chatting with Gordon White. LOL. I love that. Anyway, anything else you guys want to talk before we wrap it up? I'm starting to get a little tired here and I'm ready to get things going, unless you have any other comments or things to say. It's almost the new year here in Denver. I think 2023 has a lot more going for it than 2022. I think just a blank statement. It's a big change. It's a big year of change. It's a big year of difference. It's a big year of going into the next 3 or 4 years, guys. I think we're really wrapping up what COVID was and going into a whole new, just a whole new area, a whole new, you know, way of doing your life. And there's going to be good parts to it and there's going to be bad parts to it. But again, this is a poker game. How are you playing your cards? Are you paying attention to what other people's bets are? Are you paying attention to what, you know, are you counting the cards? Maybe it'd be good for you to learn how to count cards. Happy New Year from Oklahoma. The only place that questioned it was in Berlin. Go figure. Yeah, right. What's your astrological aspects that make you more able to entertain ideas without needing validation for your beliefs? I'm a Leo sun. I'm pretty confident in just what I think. That's probably why. What's going down in 2036? Great question. Yeah, there's a lot of astrologers on YouTube I can't listen to. 2036. So what you need to know for 2036 is the Constitution was signed when Saturn conjoined Pluto in Aquarius. The iPhone was created when Saturn went opposite Neptune in Aquarius. Now check this out. This is on my birthday, on July 22nd, 2036. Look at this. Saturn and let me move this. Saturn and Mars and Rahu and Mercury all opposite Pluto in the south node. The last time we had a Saturn-Pluto, so Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Libra, AIDS. Saturn-Pluto opposition, 9/11. Saturn-Pluto conjunction, COVID. Saturn-Pluto opposition again? I think the Constitution's ending. I think this will be the Constitution ending. I think this is also when AI will be so powerful that celebrities cease to exist, because when we had Saturn and Leo the last time, it was opposite Neptune Aquarius, and the iPhone came out, and that really democratized media and your ability to be seen on the internet. And I think this is when AI celebrities will be much more bigger, and the Constitution formally ends. through some type of, again, this is like 9/11 was a Saturn-Pluto opposition. There was a Saturn-Pluto opposition sometime in the 60s, but I can't fucking remember what it was. I have Venus return right now in my 5th house when Neptune's transiting Neptune with Jupiter in 6. Tell me how goated I am. I have Venus return right now in my 5th house where Neptune is transiting right now. So Capricorn? Sounds fun. I tried to play poker with a tarot deck. I finally got a full house, but 4 people died. What will Pluto moving into Aquarius going to do? I already have a podcast about that. The Constitution is going to give us AIDS. LOL. I'm about the year I retire. Cuban Missile Crisis. Yeah, but that wasn't Saturn-Pluto opposition yet. This was post-Saturn. And also JFK died before the Saturn-Pluto opposition. Let me double check that, because Saturn, Cuban Missile Crisis was Saturn in Aquarius and Jupiter in Pisces. Because me and SJ talk about that on Pluto Pilled. But yeah, 1965. I mean, I wonder if maybe JFK dying in 64, was that 64 that happened? Yeah, because that was before Saturn had entered. Or no, I think he died in 63. Yeah, I'm thinking of 65 would have been around that time. Something would have probably went down. But also, this was not nearly as bad as like what 2036 is. Laura Powers, do you see any possibility of God-given rights as the basis for the self-rule through our republic? That's more of a question for like when states secede. Like there's like, I think if you have like a cultural divide of like a left versus right and those states kind of switching over, that's more of a question of like if there was like a conservative, like what is Texas going to base their constitution off of, or the Republic of Texas, or whatever that entity ends up being. I don't think you'll see that kind of stuff from the left, but again, it's I don't think that's the right framing. So when the aliens going to show up, they're kind of already here. It's just a matter of when it's open. What are you supposed to learn? How are you supposed to grow in your first Saturn return? I want to make sure I cover everything before Saturn goes into Pisces. Grow the fuck up. Be disciplined. Like it's all like, it's really just about doing what you know that you need to do and stop avoiding like where you need to mature in your life. And like that can look like a lot of ways. But that's all very, individualistic. So it's really just like, you just got to grow up. You got to understand where you got to be the adult, put up your britches, be a big boy, that type of shit. Pluto Pilled is always a base convo. The Gordon White episode was fucking epic. Yeah, that was a fun conversation. I need to talk to him again. Is there any new polarity that's going to exist between the new left and the new right, creating a new paradigm of left and right? Yeah, like when the AI takes our jobs and capitalism eventually gets kind of upended. Yeah, but like it's like that's just a hard question, because we have to have these things kind of happen to where like what that paradigm is and where the split is, I couldn't tell you. But I don't see any kind of like healing until 2040. The reason I don't see any healing until 2040 is that's the next Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And that's actually in Libra. Whoops. So we had the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius, and that started the whole Aquarius stuff. We'll have the Saturn-Pluto opposition. Things are going to get really nasty. But then when we get to 2040 is when we're going to have Jupiter conjoin Saturn in Libra. It's going to trine Pluto. It's going to sextile Uranus. Neptune will be in Taurus by that point. I think things get way easier by this point. I think things are much nicer by 2040. So again, it's a long time. Like we have a very long time until things like really settle down. Anyway, I think that's it. How about that mass population call? I don't know what you're talking about there. Yeah, the East Coast experienced very warm, a lot of rain, tornadoes this week. Yeah. But I think that's what I got for you guys. I already did my year ahead for 2023, so make sure you guys check that out. I don't know what else to say. I can't believe there's 100 of you here. I only feel like 20 of you are commenting. If you haven't commented at all, throughout the live stream you're watching, say a comment to me before you go. Tell me good night and that you love me. I'm just kidding. Oh yeah, again, dude. The vaccine is going to probably what's going to be, bringing in like healthcare for all. And again, I don't think everyone's going to, exactly die from it, but like the numbers show themselves. Like a lot of people have been injured. I know people personally, and I've had clients that have had vaccine injuries. That's a Pluto and Aquarius thing, and I've said that quite a few times already. I feel like I've been pretty open about that one. Is there a link about the electric purple thing? I will post that in like my Patreon. Maybe I'll mention it in my weekly video next time, but I'll put that out there at some point. A PBS Frontline, though, is on point. Stephanie Hoffler, what up, girl? Talk about chemtrails. Good night, hog. Good night from New Jersey. Good night. Sorry, only just joined. Oh, man, you missed it 3 hours in, but you can always watch the recording. Cheryl, good night. You're Leo. Me too. We need to affirm this. Our nature. I'm watching and enjoying. Thank you, guys. Jonathan, I'm a Capricorn. LOL. If you're watching the recording of this, you're probably just so bored of me just reading the comments. But anyway, thank you for best astrologer ever. Anyway, I know I've said I'm going to end this like 10 times already, but I think I'm going to end it now. I am starting to get very tired of 3 hours of streaming, and I'm way past my bedtime. I'm typically like passed out by now. Anyway, thank you guys so much for everything. I love you guys all, and I will see you next year. Well, actually tomorrow morning, because my video comes out tomorrow morning. So I'll see you tomorrow morning.